defense rests. Let's lay it down. Gonna dig deep, wave that verdict round. The defense rests. Time to analyze. With the evidence, we'll unveil the crime. Justice served in an honest fight. True crime tales till the verdict's right. Solving more than just trivial quests, where sentences rule at the defense rests.
Good morning, y'all. Good morning. Good morning. I just have to adjust my sound settings because they're not coming through. Right. What is going on here? Come on. Come on. You can do it. I think I might have to turn the other one off. Dagnabbit. Oh, I bet you it's come unplugged. No? Hang on. I have to turn this bloody thing off. Hang on. Right. Now, that should be working, hopefully, because it doesn't Bluetooth to two places at once, funnily enough. Now, can I find it again? I know where it is. That's the screen. Come on, you silly thing. Yeah, that's better. Testing, testing. Good morning. Are you glad I'm back? No, not so much. No, still not working. Oh, I don't know where it's gone. It's ridiculous. Well, I'll have to fix that later. God damn it. I just can't. You can hear me, but I can't hear you. Mind you, you're talking, so. Good morning, Anna. Good morning. Welcome to the Defence Rest. This is your first time? Don't let it be your last. My mic's working. It's my earphones. I had a Bluetooth to a different speaker whilst I was listening to a trial. It gets it actually hurts your ears eventually. Once you've had head, there it is. That should be working now. Hang on. Where'd it go? No. Oh. Can it just go like that? Stupid. Anywho, I'll fix it up later. Good morning, Mr. Udahev. I've got hearing problems. My earphones aren't working because I can't seem to change the settings. I had it Bluetooth synced to something else, and yeah. Anywho, Today, day 4 of the Bedtime Nightmare Murders. Murder, alleged. One of those days, just one of them. So it's pretty much verdict watch. They're going to go through. There's a little issue with a juror at the start. I think he fell asleep. I just caught a glimpse of that. And then pretty much verdict watch. Now, because I was out last night with Tan, I missed quite a bit of yesterday. And apparently a few things happened. Apparently he's apparently he's changed his defence. He went from accidental discharge to my son did it, apparently. So I might, did you catch any of that yesterday, Anna, or Udahef? Did you see any of day 3? Because I believe the defence didn't even put up a defence at all once the state rested. But I think they had something to say at the time. So once we've gone through these last bit of jury instructions, I'll nick back to day 3 and have a look. But yeah, I didn't think there was a defence. Yeah. And I must say, I really, really like the prosecution. Is it? Or was it the defence? The lady with the beautiful red hair, wavy hair. Oh, I want it. I can't stop looking at it. So Tan and I had a really good time last night. We went to it was like a function centre that had 2 investigative journalists there. They were Andrew Rule and John Sylvester, and they actually wrote the books called Leadbelly, which the Underbelly series was written off. So it was awesome. It just actually worked out really, really well that they happened to be, in our area. And we're doing the Gangland Wars. So Tan asked a few questions and I tried to make a few connections because they are covering the Erin Patterson trial. The lady that made the beef Wellington with the mushrooms. So I was trying to see if they could get me a court feed because I'm sneaky. So I'm going to email Andrew Rule back. They're flat out. They're still working. They're busy as. And they don't have a lot of time to cover a lot of the US stuff. So I've thought maybe I could be their US correspondent and keep them up to date on what's happening with US trials. And they can feed me with the Aussie shit. Because they've got a court reporter that's in the courtroom that reports to them, and they have a podcast. So either that or we listen to the podcast. More than one way to get a catch. So anywho, so that was good fun. We got home quite late. Had a bit of a flutter on the pokies. One absolutely jack shit, but had a laugh. What else is there? Oh, so I've been researching a new trial for Monday. Yes. It's all about networking, Anna. All about networking. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Simple. So, come Monday, allegedly, we have a new trial starting called, it's Brian Cherry. It's out of Baltimore, Maryland. And he is on trial for a double unaliving of a grandmother and a granddaughter. He is only young. He's had a prior history of armed robbery with a suspended sentence. He had a conviction on that. He's had assault and drug possession charges. He was actually on pretrial release facing drug charges of possession and intent to sell. when he attacked a convenience store lady and stabbed her. And she survived. And then a week later stabbed a medical, what is it called? Medical, people that go around and hand out free medical supplies and stuff, just at community centres. Stabbed him 8 times. He survived. And then a week later, allegedly unalived the grandmother and granddaughter, Iona and Autumn. They were found in their home a couple of days after the actual incident. And then a week later, they put an arrest warrant out for him. I think it was 4 days before he'd unalived the grandmother and granddaughter. And they still hadn't managed to pick him up. And so a week later, he did it to someone else as well. So he's actually got the first 3 cases go to trial Monday. And the 4th one, which is the other first-degree murder, goes on the 28th of March. So we can try and follow that one as well. But, yeah, it sounds awful. It sounds like law enforcement actually dropped the ball a bit there. He slipped through a bit of the judicial cracks, I think. So hopefully that starts Monday, but we won't know until the thumbnail pops up on a court feed. I do have a couple of other possible feeds that I might be able to get, but we'll have to wait and see. If not, I'll pull something out of the hat. All right, let's get into it, shall we? That one and go. Yeah, see, I can't hear a goddamn thing. Yeah. Can you hear that? Oh, yes, I can hear it on my screen. I'll fiddle with my speakers now. Sweet. Thanks, Anna.
We just have one issue to discuss. All right. So Mr. Terry and I both noticed yesterday during closing argument that Mr. Flowers, who is on the panel, not an alternate, he is the gentleman who's in the back row to the right against the wall. Mr. Terry and I both clearly noticed his eyes were closed the entire time. We both kept an eye on him during all the closings. There was at one point he was kind of sitting forward and just had his eyes closed, and then there was a
haven't you?
He went back and
Well,
continued to just have his eyes.
I have to admit, I've only seen bits and pieces of it. I've seen the whole of day 2 and half of day 1, but not a lot of day 3 because that was last night and I sleep streamed it. So I'll go back and watch day 3, but 2 and 3 are probably the most important, I think. They have the medical examiner and crime scene photos, and they're a bit graphic. And then today is day 4 and it's verdict watch pretty much. So half of yesterday was jury instructions. So, so you haven't missed a great deal. You could watch it in double time and have it all done within a day and a half, if that. What was I doing? Oh, my settings.
Completely closed.
So I can hear.
I've discussed it with Mr. Terry. We have discussed it with Mr. Bass and Ms. Bradley, and I believe we're all in agreement that we would strike and all agreed to strike him for cause because of what we saw. And we are willing to accept the first alternate if that is okay with the court. And right. I have discussed that as well with Mr. Bass, pros and cons of each of them such, and that is his desire to ask the court to do that as well.
Right. Is that right, Mr. Bass?
Yes.
All right. And Mr. Terry?
Yes, Judge. I'm always hesitant to switch out a juror, but I can't argue with Mr. Schlemmer because he did appear to be almost sleepy, but I don't know that he was sleeping. It's hard to say. Some people are concentrating with their eyes closed, but since I don't know, I can't really say. So I'm not going to object to this.
All right. Then alternate one would be Richmond. So Richmond goes on.
One of the jurors slept right through jury instructions yesterday, apparently. I don't blame him, really. Good morning, Palola's mum. Good morning, good morning. I'm just fixing my earphones. They one of the jurors fell asleep throughout the entire jury instructions yesterday, so they're swapping him out with an alternate. That's a nightmare, washing dishes, you do. Come on.
All right, be seated. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. How are you? Good. Everyone had a restful night, I hope. Have any of you seen or heard or learned anything about this case or the people or places involved in this case? No's from everyone. Terrific. So a few final instructions to give you, and if you want to read along with me, I am on page 18 of 22, where it says 3.13, submitting the case to the jury. Page 18. All right, in just a few minutes, the bailiff will take you into the jury room, and the first thing you should do there is choose a foreperson who will preside over your deliberations. The foreperson should see to it your discussions are carried on in an organized way and that everyone has a fair chance to be heard. It is also the foreperson's responsibility to sign and date the verdict form when all of you have agreed on a verdict and to bring that verdict form back here into the courtroom. You will discuss this case with your fellow jurors to reach an agreement. Again, your verdict must be unanimous. Each of you must decide the case for yourself, but you should do so only after you've considered all the evidence, discussed it fully with the other jurors, and listened to the views of your fellow jurors. Do not hesitate to change your opinion if the discussion persuades you to do so. However, you should not surrender your considered opinion in order to be congenial or to reach a verdict solely because of the opinions of other jurors. Do not change your honest belief about the weight and effect of the evidence simply to reach a verdict. During deliberations, you must communicate about this case only with one another, only when all of you are present together in the jury room. If, for example, a juror goes to the restroom, the deliberation should stop until that juror returns. You're not to communicate with any person outside the jury about this case. Until you've reached a verdict, you must not talk about this case with others in person or through any other means. Do not contact anyone to assist you during your deliberations. These communication rules apply until I discharge you at the end of this case, and if you become aware of a violation of these instructions or any other instructions I've given you, you must tell me by giving a note to the bailiff. Many of you have cell phones, tablets, laptops, smartwatches, other electronic devices here in the courtroom. Our rules do not allow you to take those into the jury room, so leave them with the bailiffs and they'll be secured and guarded while you deliberate. If you do need to make a quick text or call to someone to let them know you will be incommunicado for a while because you're about to begin deliberations, you're welcome to do that before you start. The bailiff will also explain how to advise us when you've reached a verdict or how to communicate with us if you have a question. If you do need to communicate
I think I have
with
to
me,
put the other
send a
bloody
note
speakers
through
back
the
on. Hang on.
bailiff signed by the foreperson. If you've already voted on one or more of the verdicts, do not disclose your actual vote in a note to us. If you do have a question, though, I must discuss it with all court personnel to determine first whether legally and procedurally we can even answer it. And second, if it is a question we can answer, how we will do so. So there will obviously be a delay in any response to you. You may continue your deliberations if you're able to do so while you wait for my answer. I will answer questions either in writing back to you or orally here in the courtroom. Generally, though, please understand we cannot answer questions dealing with the testimony of the witnesses you've heard during the trial. You must rely on your own recollection of the answers the witnesses gave to the questions that were asked of them. We cannot give you an answer to any question that was not asked, nor can we explain an answer that was given by a witness. During the trial, certain items may have been received into evidence as exhibits. All of those exhibits will be sent into the jury room with you when you begin to deliberate. You're free to examine them in the jury room. However, you may see and consider only items or documents that were actually received in evidence. You may not see documents such as police reports or depositions that might have been discussed during the trial, but were not placed in evidence. As to the instructions on the law, you obviously have available to you this exact set of written instructions.
Okay, so I'm an idiot. The web plugs in properly, okay? Morning, toxicology. Hello. I had some earphone issues. Helps if you plug them in properly, apparently. You guys, if you haven't been over to As the Gavel Drops, get on over there because I've just absolutely annihilated it with the next trial coming Monday. They are awesome. Awesome. If you need any documents or looking up what dates and times and updated news and anything, any thread to all media for every single trial. A1. I think I've got this still. I'm sure I do. Yeah, there you go. Look at that. And they've just started a YouTube channel as well. So
Instructions I've just read to you.
thank
There are no
you.
time limitations for jury deliberations. This is completely up to the jury. You may continue to deliberate as long as you wish. If you choose to deliberate past the lunch or dinner hour.
I've had a few issues with my Discord server, most of them because I can't do much with it. It's not yeah, we won't go there. But you guys use the notified bot, don't you, to pick up live streams? Because I'm trying to find a news bot that will pick up trials and anything that comes along that I like, that I can select. Will come into one of my channels. on the Discord. So, yes. Did you get my payment last week? Yeah, a lot of the documents you have to are hidden behind paywalls, so they often purchase them off their own back and provide them for everyone. So they're actually doing. Oh, okay. I don't mind paying for them, provided it's not huge. I think it was an RSS feed one. I think it's called Newsbot or something. But yeah. No, nothing. Okay. I'll redo it again. Thank you. Don't know what went on there. No, I didn't. I've just been mental. Never mind. I'll do it again. Won't hurt. If it doubles up, it doubles up. Double bonus.
Or would like us to
I'll get my
order
money's worth,
lunch
trust
or
me.
dinner for you, please let us know. Additionally, if at any time you would like to suspend deliberations and return tomorrow to continue, please let us know that as well. In closing, let me remind you it's important that you follow the law spelled out in these instructions in deciding your verdict. There are no other laws that apply to this case. Even if you do not like the laws that must be applied, you must use them. For over 2 centuries, we've lived by the Constitution and the law. No juror has the right to violate rules we have agreed to share. So I have that are going back with you as well. The court's jury instructions, these are in yellow, just so you have a formal copy to look at. I have made a couple of changes that you may have heard me mention during the course of reading the instructions when I noticed an error. Just to do that out here in public on page 2 of 22. Where it says Introduction to Homicide 7.1.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Paragraph, if you find JAYLA Bass.
As I said, I've been having a few issues with my Discord server, mainly because I don't have any permissions to do a lot of things. The people that are setting it up for me haven't allowed many things to be done, and I've sort of got a bit frustrated with it. So I haven't been on there, which defeats the purpose, really. I'm just looking for that link again for buying a document. I can't see it. Must be blind. I'll find it. It'll be here somewhere. I know. Yeah, I know. Yep. Just don't go there. Just don't.
By Jermaine Bass, you will then consider the circumstances surrounding the killing and deciding if the killing was first-degree murder or any lesser included offense. That should read. And so I've corrected it, and it's in bold on page 2 of 22. Additionally, on page 4 of 22, under felony murder in the first degree, item number 2, element number 2, read, while engaged in the commission of an aggravated child abuse on either JAYLA Bass or Jermaine Bass in counts 2 and 3, or any lesser charge on those counts, that shouldn't be there. That's stricken through. So I've stricken through that.
I've stricken through it.
So you can see it on this copy.
Here's the.
And additionally, I told you on the verdict form.
The link.
Now I can't really remember which one it was, but I didn't have that final question, yes or no, under it.
The voice is
I
very
just made
annoying.
the final correction, so each selection has an appropriate yes or no. I would just remind you too, as we've discussed during the trial, there is sometimes confusion in the record. Jermaine Bass is the name of the defendant, obviously. His name throughout these instructions is referred to as Jermaine Lavanda Bass.
I know why.
Jermaine.
I know where it where I went wrong. It's asking me for my my X login, and I think I put in my YouTube login. That's right. I can't seem to link my YouTube to it, but that's all right.
Bass, the victim,
That's what went
is
wrong.
also known by JJ that we discussed during the trial. So when he's referred to, it either says Jermaine Bass without the Lavanda or Jermaine JJ Bass. So I just wanted to make you aware. It's mostly clear throughout this, but just remember when you're talking about Jermaine Bass, the victim, that obviously is the child in the case. Does that make sense to everyone? All right. I also, the verdict form is also in yellow to distinguish it from your copy. You will also have a list that the clerk has prepared of all the evidence items that are listed by number and then what they are. So you don't have to unfold every envelope if you don't have to do it. So it has the number of the exhibit and then what it is, so you can refer to it easily. You do have electronics back there if you wanted to look at or hear or see any of the video evidence that was introduced. So that's in the jury room as well. So with that, with the exception of Christopher Flowers and David Hutchinson, Mr. Flowers and Mr. Hutchinson are our alternate jurors. In Florida, 12 jurors are required, no less and no more, to sit on a case and deliberate on a first-degree murder. We are required by law to have alternates because if some emergency had happened during the course of this trial, we would have to start all over again if one juror became sick or incapacitated or something, and we didn't have alternates. So you are the alternates in the case, so stay with me 1 minute. I just wanted everyone else to know why you weren't going back there to begin deliberations. But the rest of you are excused to begin deliberations at this time. All rise. All right, have a seat. I just want to spend one moment telling you that I hear from other jurors, alternates sometimes, that they sat through and sacrificed so much to be told at the end they're an alternate and get to deliberate. I truly hope that you don't think that your time has been wasted because you were the alternates in the case. I can assure you it was not. Many
Is that me again? Did we lose court feed sound, or is that me? All right, cool. I think I did it.
experience or
Oh, for sure.
so that they too
Yes.
will come down to the courthouse when they get their jury service summons. So your jury service is officially concluded. You're welcome to wait if you want to see what the jurors do. You're welcome. It's an open courtroom. You can wait. You have my contact information. If you don't, the bailiff will give it to you again if you want to call me and find out what happens, or if you want to leave your contact information with the bailiff, we'll call you and let you know what the jury decided or what the actual verdict is. Also, as a trial lawyer for many years before I became a judge, I love.
I might start a poll, see how long
about either the case or what happened
jury
during the
deliberations are going to be.
If you're willing and interested to do that, I know the lawyers here would love the experience of getting your feedback about the trial and what your thoughts and perceptions were. Let the bailiff know that. He'll just bring you around, and the attorneys would be glad to talk to you. And if you want to rely on the fact that your jury service is concluded, you're welcome to go home and go about your personal affairs for the rest of the week and weekend. So I hope you have a great rest of your week and weekend. And I want to thank you again on behalf of the parties, on behalf of all of my judge colleagues here in Tampa, we thank you so much for the sacrifices you made and the attention that you paid. And your jury service now officially concluded. So thank you very much.
All rise.
All right, we'll be in recess pending a jury verdict.
All right, start poll. All right, we have a poll up. Absolutely. Yep. You should have received that coffee. Oh yes, they did before too. They actually said the two alternates' names, which is a bit silly. But they say it so quickly before you can even stop. I'll stay a little bit, see how we go. I actually want to go back and watch a little bit of yesterday because I missed a lot of it. So yeah, we're going to backtrack while we're waiting. Okay. Let's go to in there. And I want day 3. I just noticed Miss Mandy's got a stream coming up at 5. A true crime Thursday, but she spelled Thursday wrong. I'll have to get on there and The Diddler and Andrew Tate. Oh God, no, thank you. We don't. Oh, why did I click on that? Where am I? Come on, get your shit together, Jodie. Got TV. Thank you. So day 3. Where? Okay. We're going to jump into the criminal intelligence analyst, the phone cell data to start with, because the guy at the start just basically went through the Ring cameras for like 2 hours of nothing. Share the screen, Jade. That one. There you go.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that testimony that you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth? Andrew Tate. I know that name.
If you would please introduce yourself and spell your name for us.
Is that the other trial that's on with what's her name? I'm gonna have to bloody look it up now. I can't remember. Andrew Tate. Yeah, but hasn't he got a girlfriend that? Am I thinking of something different? Must be on ongoing trials. Oh, there. Come on. Why am I missing it? I'm going round in circles. No, I missed it. Anyway, never mind.
Bethany Ross, BETHANYROSS.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Ms. Ross. Oh, it's still morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Please turn to the jury and tell them where you work.
The Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office.
How long have you worked for the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office?
It'll be 10 years next month.
What do you do there?
I'm a criminal intelligence analyst in the Criminal Investigations Division.
How long have you been a criminal intelligence analyst?
About 6.5
Ow.
years.
What did you do before that?
I was a deputy for about 3.5 years.
Now, when you become a criminal intelligence analyst, what's required of you when you transfer from being a deputy to a criminal intelligence analyst?
Yeah, you're learning completely new technology, completely new applications. It's all about getting information that the detectives may need for their case, and then obviously in a prosecution of a case later as well.
Give us some examples so the jury can understand what kind of things you work on during your experience as a criminal intelligence analyst.
No worries.
So I help
Back at you,
identify
darling.
people in a case. I help give them vehicle information, stuff like that. And then I also map a lot of different things, such as cell records.
So when you're talking about mapping cell records, help us understand the process. What goes into mapping cell phone records?
We get provider information, such as T-Mobile, AT&T, and Verizon. They give us like an Excel document that has latitude and longitude of, say, like the cell phone tower that cell phone connected to. And from there, you can map that information.
Are you the one who generally requests these records from providers such as T-Mobile or Verizon?
No,
Who usually does that?
the detectives.
Now, once the detectives receive that information, what kind of information is usually inside of the packet that you get?
Yeah, there's got to be a date, a time, that phone number, the target phone number that they were looking for, who that phone number was talking to, if it was voice records. And then it would also be the tower information so that you can map that information.
I'm showing you what's been entered into evidence. I'll put it on the Elmo here if I can have some help. Thank you. This is what's been entered into evidence as states 29. Is this an example of some of those records that you would receive in order to do your job as a criminal intelligence analyst?
Yes.
Okay, and did you in fact receive the documents from T-Mobile in this case that are included in this states 29 involving the defendant in this case, Jermaine Bass?
I did.
When you receive these documents, help us understand what is the first thing you do when you receive call records from, in this case, for instance, T-Mobile?
I make sure that it has the relevant time that we are looking for, that it is the correct phone number, and then that there is mappable information within those records.
How do you know whether or not there is mappable information in the records when you receive it?
It's filled out in the latitude and longitude columns. It's filled out in the E-node columns, everything that denotes that a tower is being used and that tower information is present.
Explain to the jury how you became involved in this investigation involving the defendant in this case, Jermaine Bass Jr.
The lead detective, Detective Gabo, asked me to map a certain time period of these records.
Now, tell us the phone number associated with the records that you were asked to map. And if you need your memory refreshed by your report or your map, let me know and I can do that.
Yes, I would have to look at the records for that.
Okay, I'm showing you what's been entered into evidence as State's Exhibit 21. Is this a map you created along with your experience and involvement in this investigation?
It is, yeah.
Can you read out to the jury the phone number that was used in order to map in this investigation?
That's 813-696-7195.
Do I have permission to publish to the jury, Your Honor?
Yes.
to aid in your testimony, before I do that, so you receive these T-Mobile records, you make sure that they have information that is mappable. What do you do after that?
From there, we use a program called CellHawk that actually takes that file and creates that map so that it's not like I'm hand drawing it. It can make that map.
You told us that you've been a criminal intelligence analyst for what, 6 years?
Yes.
During that process of becoming a criminal intelligence analyst, did you receive training in how to use this program that you described as being called CellHawk?
Yes.
What's the training involved? Just briefly describe it for us.
Yeah, they take you through every step of getting the records, looking at the records, and then mapping those records and how to interpret that information.
When you put the records into the
I
program,
can't find anything on tape anywhere.
then what do you do after this program produces the map?
I take a screenshot of that in order to put it in a document with all of that original information that we got from T-Mobile so that we can see it together.
So when you initially become a criminal intelligence analyst and you learn how to use CellHawk, do you maintain any sort of continuing education on the changes that happens with updating technology?
I do. I have to keep up to date with that stuff because it changes constantly. So at least once a year, there's webinars and a lot of different information out there that I'll keep up with.
And do you maintain that continuing education for the CellHawk process?
I do.
Tell the jury approximately how many times during your career as a criminal intelligence analyst that you've used this mapping process with this program called CellHawk.
Hundreds of times.
So in this case, the investigation involving Jermaine Bass Jr., the defendant, you receive his cell phone records from, who's the provider?
T-Mobile.
And tell the jury what you do next.
Okay,
Once I
so
have that screenshot,
I'm looking
then
in the
I
wrong
will put
place
it
then.
together in a document to give to detectives and put in the case.
So I'm placing on the Elmo what's been entered into evidence as states 21. Is what we're looking at in states 21 an example of the mapping that you just discussed?
Yes.
So you use the information provided within the T-Mobile records, you put it in this program, and this is what it spits out.
The screenshot is exactly.
Okay, so I want to talk about the map. Let's orient the jury what we're looking for in the map, okay? On the bottom left-hand portion, I see West Shore. I'm pointing to
Just
it
scared the
with
shit out of me.
back there is a line
hang on.
right through the word West Shore. Is that West Shore Boulevard here?
You scared the fuck out of me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. I had my earphones up on high and
I've got the same thing going on. I have mine turned up high too. And I didn't even know you could do that because my other one I've had for years and it was broken. I didn't know you could turn them up. And when I got my new
boosted. I've
when
got
I
it
got
boosted
my-
as well.
and when I got my new one and I've turned them up, I was like, holy hell, these are
Yeah, yeah. And you hear this boop, and it's
yeah. And I got a jump scare. And so the first time I got a jump scare with them turned all the way up, I literally threw drink up in the air and it went all over my computer and keyboard. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm turning this down. And somebody took a clip of me throwing drink up in the air and they were like, yeah, I'm posting this. I was like, you would.
So you're doing a true crime Thursday, darling.
I am, yeah.
Did you notice your spelling on the thumbnail?
Did I misspell it? What did I misspell? Oh no, what did I misspell?
Thursday.
I'm gonna go look now. Oh my gosh! I'm gonna delete it right now. Thursday.
What's your topic for the day?
TR. Oh, T. I'm not telling. It's a surprise because I got a surprise guest coming up. THRU.
Oh, sweet.
Lord Jesus, help me.
Did you
Well, I'm gonna
Did you
keep it on
watch
there so
the-
I can make fun of myself.
have you been keeping tabs on Karen Reid?
The what?
On Karen Reid?
Yeah.
Been keeping tabs?
Is that not nuts? Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This whole situation is just crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Now trial by
And
public
that
in the court of public opinion now. It's yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But she just-
Beverly Canoni, she is so biased. Her bias is nuts. Or
you
I
can't
think
tell
so.
me Hank Brennan did not know what he was doing. He absolutely knew what he was doing.
Knew. He's dirty.
Yep. And
He's
he left
dirty.
it hanging out there for a week, so everyone could speculate on it. And as Vladimir, was it Putin said? Well, Hank actually
Putin,
quoted
yeah.
him. Yeah. If
Yeah.
a lie is left unchecked, it becomes the truth. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a really big case in my town, which has one stoplight that is going like super, super viral. And I noticed like big YouTubers are starting to cover it now.
What is it?
And it's what is this kid's name? Hold on, let me pull this up. I want to make sure I get the kid's name right. It's a teenager killed another teenager. And it's let me pull it up.
What new channel, Palola's mum?
Say that again.
What do we? No, Palola's mum's asked what's the new channel that we should watch.
New channel?
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about.
No, I mean
Dan Crenshaw. Yeah, that's the teenager that passed away. Was walking to the store to get.
What's the defendant's name?
I don't know the defendant's name. That's the child that passed away. Was walking to the grocery store to get medical supplies for his mother, and was shot and killed. Is that not so sad?
Yeah.
And they were aiming for someone else and shot and killed him. No, not the politician. Not the politician. I knew somebody was going to say that.
What's the defendant's name? And I'll search it on.
I don't know. I have to get back to you on that. I'm sorry. I apologize.
What's the victim's name then?
Dan Crenshaw.
Pardon?
Dan Crenshaw. You'd have just put it in the chat.
Dan.
I know it is an unfortunate name. Poor kid. He went by Danny. I'll send you my town's name. I don't want to just spit it out.
Yeah,
there.
fair enough. Oh.
Yeah, it was so sad. We just had newlyweds killed on their wedding night. Oh. It's awful. What is the world coming to?
Yep.
It's awful. It's just a sad situation.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry I'm not on camera, but I haven't done my face yet, and I'm not
that's fine.
exposing you guys to this because it's scary.
I know. Me too.
Like I have to warm up the fire and I mean it's
I have to wave the wand.
Exactly. It's a whole situation.
I hear.
So what are we watching? Florida versus Jermaine Bass or Bass or
Bass, I think.
Bass. Okay.
It's
what did he do or not do?
So he has two children, or had two children, 1 5, 1 8, both in bed together. Both gunshot wounds to the head. One had 3. The daughter, I think she was 5, had 3. One was right between the eyes. And the son had 1. He survived. She didn't. And he was
Wait a minute. He had a gunshot wound to the head and survived?
Yes.
Wow. Tough kid.
He's got one side facial paralysis, and yeah, he's not right.
Oh, poor thing.
But he was claiming accidental discharge of the weapon.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And then apparently halfway through, that's why I've gone back to day 3. Apparently yesterday he changed his defense to his son did it. Trying to blame the sun now.
Didn't blame his son. No, he didn't.
Sorry, you're breaking up. Hello? Hello? I think she's dropped out. Who's hotties? This is the craziest time in history. Yeah, I'll say. You both are beautiful. Oh. I actually haven't got my makeup on tonight. I put a bit of lipstick on and I just couldn't be bothered doing the rest because I'd had a lovely shower and cleansed my skin and I'm like, yeah, can't be fucked. Plus I was busy. I was yeah, no, she's dropped out. Setting up for the podcast because we're actually going to do a deep dive on this trial on Saturday to go through that defense. That's why I was trying to catch up on it. But I was explaining, we've got a new trial starting Monday. Why does my nose get blocked every time? I've been sitting here for about an hour. It's a case in Baltimore County, Maryland, I think, or Maryland County, Baltimore. I know. Brian Cherry. Yeah, so that's Monday's. It's a double homicide, grandmother and granddaughter. So that'll be starting Monday. So podcast Saturday, new trial Monday. All right, let's keep going.
In Tampa.
Yeah, West Shore Boulevard is in that area, and that West Shore is denoting that that's kind of the area, West Shore.
Right above that, we see another line and another, it's two lines together. It looks like almost kind of a pie chart situation right above Tampa International Airport. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Oh, sure. For the
That's
record,
better,
I'm
we can
zooming
see it.
in so that we get a closer look at what I just pointed out to be the West Shore in the bottom left-hand corner area and what the witness has described as Tampa International Airport right before that. Right to the left of Tampa International Airport, we see symbols that look like it would be some sort of highway with a circle, a white circle that has numbers on it. What is that representing?
Yeah, that's showing 589, excuse me, and this is using actually like Google Maps information.
And then if we go up in the middle, we're seeing two half pie graph almost situations. To the right of that, we're seeing University Square. Tell us what area we're looking at now.
Yeah, the university area or the University Square area.
Right through that, we see yellow lines and a marker that is commonly known to be an interstate marker. Tell the jury what interstate marker that would be.
I-275.
Tell us about the text boxes that we see on the map. We're going to go one by one, but a general understanding of where does this information come from? Does the CellHawk program produce the map along with these text boxes?
No, the CellHawk program gave me that map. And from there, I go back to those records to copy paste this tower information, the date and time, and that incoming or outgoing call information, along with the duration into these little text boxes so that I can show exactly how that tower relates to the information that T-Mobile gave us.
Now, throughout the map, and again, we'll go one by one, we see what looks like lines that have like a half circle on them. I also see one that is a full circle. What do those symbolize? Just so the jury understands before we go one by one.
For that full circle, T-Mobile is not able to give us a direction. So we just have a 360 around the tower. For example, to the left of that, it's showing kind of southeast. And that means T-Mobile was able to give us a direction, which is southeast of that tower.
So what do these markers or the pie graphs or the circle, what does it indicate? You're saying it indicates a tower, but what about the tower?
That tower was in communication with that cell phone during that incoming or outgoing call.
So the purpose of the shape or the marker on the map shows us where the cell phone is at any given time?
It at least shows the direction from the tower that the cell phone was in.
Okay, so I want to start at the top text box. We see a full circle, which again indicates to you that the cell phone is bouncing off this tower,
Yes.
correct?
Yes,
But it's not indicating to you a location in which it's heading. Is that safe to say?
exactly.
Now we see a line with, it's an arrow to the right of the circle. And we see a text box that I'm pointing to. It's the topmost portion on the right side text box. Explain to us what that means, that text box.
It starts with the E node B, the sector, and the azimuth, which is all going to be tower information. That azimuth is blank. I just have a dash there because we don't have a direction, and that's actually where that would come from. The location is followed by that, and that's literally the latitude and longitude of the tower. And then we have the date and the time, and it was an incoming call from this phone number, 361-217-7632, and the duration is 0 seconds. There was no duration.
So we have that at 6:04:03 p.m. Next in time, we see to the left, two lines intersecting, right encompassing the words University Mall. It encompasses the two first letters U and N. Explain to
There's
the
your
jury,
Walmart
maybe you can stand up
reference.
and point or come over here and point. Judge, does she have permission to do that?
Sure.
If you
Probably
can,
going to you is probably best.
yes, ma'am. If you can please come around so that you can point to yourself on the Elmo.
Make sure you describe with words too.
So specifically, and I'm going to rearrange. We see a top text box on the top left corner. I'm pointing to it right now. From that text box, we see a red or orange arrow pointing to the pie graph encompassing the first two letters of the word University Mall. Now, I noticed that this graph we're looking at, the symbol is different than the circle. And if you don't mind, can you come around this way instead right there to point so that we're just not blocking the jurors? Can you point to the University Mall one and explain to the jury the difference between the circle we just saw and the information that it provides to you and this pie graph that we're looking at that's kind of like a semicircle with two lines? What's the difference?
So in the original one, the circle right in the middle of that is going to be where that tower is, where that line is inside that circle. Instead, on this one, it's where these two lines meet. The tower is actually going to be right there. And we get that southeast direction because it's kind of facing southeast.
The semicircle that we see shaded in connecting those two lines, what does the semicircle symbolize to you?
This is just a display. It's half a mile out from the tower. That does not mean that the cell phone was half a mile out from the tower. It's a traditional kind of display for this type of information.
And let's talk about the text box that's associated. We pointed out before at the topmost
This
left.
is boring
one.
as shit. So
We see it says
next.
the E node B, the sector, and explain to us, the one before didn't have an azimuth. What is an
ANDA. I cut and pasted it, so it
Ah.
should be wrong the whole
Going
time.
through jury instructions.
I guess not.
Time lab.
What was your title when you worked for the
Firearms
Florida
specialist.
Department of Law Enforcement? We also call it FDLE in the firearms department.
My title when I left was Senior Crime Laboratory Analyst.
What did you do at Florida Department of Law Enforcement as a senior crime laboratory analyst?
I did the same thing that I'm doing at Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office.
So let's go back to your education and your background in firearms. Tell the jury what your training and your education background is in firearms.
I have a bachelor's degree in chemistry from the University of South Florida, and I completed an
This must be the
18-month
important bit, I
structured
think.
training program at the Florida Department of Law Enforcement in the field of
I think once this witness has finished, the state rests, and then I think we have our discussion from the defence because they don't put upper defense. And I think that's when they might mention the change in their tactics.
Firearms identification.
What year did you start working at FDLE?
I began working at FDLE in 2006.
When you started working with FDLE in 2006, did you receive specialized training in order to become a crime laboratory analyst?
Purdy.
When I began with FDLE in 2006, I was in a different section. I started in firearms in 2009.
So in 2009 at FDLE.
I need to do an Uda Hef, she's a hottie compilation.
Explain to us what training that you underwent in order to be working in the firearms section at FDLE.
The 18-month structured training program that I went
And
through.
guess what? I can laugh as loud as I fucking want because my quick roommate is gone. Oh, thank the Lord.
Included units in
sorry. Oh, it wouldn't. I sent a picture to my yeah. I love living by myself. I love it. I'd forgotten. I sent a picture to my kids because I've got one cat that has separation anxiety, like bad. Like every time I go into the shower or go to the toilet, it's like he's having a panic attack. It's just you can't see me. So as soon as my flatmate moved out, it was again the open toilet door policy. So the first time I went in there with the toilet door open, I had two cats laying on the floor in front of me, just like, yeah. So I took a photo of them and sent it to my kids. I said, the cats are loving the new open door toilet policy. But the neighbours don't particularly like the new water in the garden in the nude policy.
firearms function and safety testing, which included assembly and disassembly of firearms in order to know how they work. I did units in microscopy of bullets, microscopy of cartridge cases, firearms history and development, ammunition history and development.
She'd get on well with Ian.
I did units in serial number restoration, distance determination.
They are happy.
And I
I'm
also completed then I completed an oral board, which was essentially 3.5 hours of question after question, making sure I understood everything in the firearm section. During that time, I also completed I had to do competency tests and also had to do practicals in order to be able to complete my training. After I completed all of that, I did 6 months of supervised casework, which was then culminated with a mock trial of testimony, and then I was released to do supervised casework. I'm not supervised, my own casework.
Do you have to have an official certification in order to be completely done with all of this training to do your own casework?
I received just a completion of the training program from the Florida Department of Law Enforcement.
When you worked at FDLE in the forensic or the firearms department, approximately how many times did you have an occasion to analyze a firearm?
I did not count how many times I had an opportunity to analyze a firearm, but at this point it's in the thousands.
When you started at HCSO, approximately how many times since you've joined HCSO have you had an occasion to analyze a firearm?
Hundreds.
Have you testified in court as a firearms expert before?
Yes, I have.
Approximately how many times?
More than 60.
Your Honor, at this time, I tender the witness as an expert in the area of firearms to.
Any questions? No questions. All right, you can proceed.
Help us understand. We have, during the course of this trial, heard terms such as projectile and casing. Are those things that you analyze in your capacity as a forensic lab firearms analyst at HCSO?
Yes.
Let's start with a projectile. Walk us through what is a projectile.
A projectile is the portion, it is also called a bullet. That is the part of a cartridge that will go down the barrel of a firearm when it is fired.
What about a casing? What is a casing?
A cartridge case is the Tupperware container of the cartridge itself. It will hold the bullet at the top. The cartridge case holds inside of it the gunpowder. And at the very head stamp or the bottom of the cartridge case, you will see the primer. On the head stamp of that cartridge case is usually the brand and the caliber.
So a projectile, is that word synonymous with or the same as a bullet in layman's terms?
Yes.
You refer to the cartridge casing. We've heard the term casing. Are those two words or terms synonymous, the same thing?
Yes, I call it a cartridge case. I will hear the word casing.
Now, when you are analyzing a firearm, what is the purpose of analyzing a firearm?
When I'm looking at a firearm, I'm looking at it to see that all of the safeties are working, that there's no damage to the firearm. I want to make sure it's safe for me to fire when the time comes. Then the next step would be to test fire that firearm and obtain those test fires in order to look at those test fires to do any comparisons to any evidence of cartridge cases or bullets that I might receive.
When you receive a firearm and you are requested to test the firearm, when you're doing these test fires, is that the process of making sure the firearm is functional?
Yes.
During your inspection of the safeties that you described, is that also a part of your analysis of whether or not a firearm is actually functional?
Yes.
When you analyze a firearm to see if the safeties are working or whether or not it's functional, do you ever receive projectiles or cartridge casings as well?
Yes.
What are you an expert at doing when you have a projectile, casings, and a firearm as a forensic lab firearms analyst?
I am tasked to determine whether or not those bullets or cartridge cases were fired in or from that firearm.
I want to talk about that process in detail. When you are tasked with analyzing whether or not a cartridge casing came from a specific firearm, walk us through the process. How is that done?
Once I've test fired the firearm, I'm going to bring those test fires back, and I'm going to then look at the class characteristics that are on those cartridge cases. I'm going to document them on the firearm worksheet, and then I'm going to take out each of the evidence cartridge cases that I receive, and I'm going to document each one of those. I'm going to look to see what the class characteristics are on that particular cartridge case. So a class characteristic is something that's predetermined by the manufacturer, and it could be typical of other guns, not just that particular gun. An example would be the shape of the firing pin, the shape of the firing pin aperture. That's the hole that the firing pin sticks out.
All right, lovely, boring too.
And what type of marks I see on the character.
Located within a firearm.
Of that spiral grooves that you see within the interior or to other items of evidence.
In this case, tell the jury, so what happens next?
If I see repeating patterns of individual characteristics on the item, then I can make identifications.
And again, you're looking at these class characteristics and individual characteristics on a test fire and a projectile provided to you under a microscope, correct?
Correct.
Now, tell us about the test firing process. When you receive a firearm,
did they match the gun?
Firearm that you receive for testing, does it get an individual case number associated with it that you just explained is representative on this firearm?
Yeah. It gets an individual.
Yep. I did a very, very quick AI analysis on his. They actually didn't cover the entire trial. They just had bits and pieces of it because of the ASAP trial that dominated everything. So I sort of grabbed the bits that were important and put a little bit of an overall overview type of thing of it. But I didn't have time to do the voiceover, so I used AI. Sorry. But it is on there. Because I know Elizabeth wanted to follow it, but I just didn't have time to do it all.
Property item number or exhibit number, and it will have a case number, and then I will write those things on the firearm or the date and my initials on them. In this case, I wrote all of that myself.
When you
he got sentenced the following day, didn't he? Do you know what the sentence was? Anyone? I haven't had a chance to look that up.
Receive a firearm. I heard you talk about some of their training includes the assembly and disassembly of the firearm when deciding whether or not a firearm is operable. Is that correct?
Yes.
Did you do that in this case? Is that a part of your evaluation when you receive a firearm? Is assembling and disassembling?
It's not that exciting, Anna.
Disassembling and then assembling the
Oh,
firearm?
shit, really? Poor bugger. No, I just have to live with that. What's the world coming to?
I test fired the firearm first, and then I did remove the slide to check the safeties.
Okay, so how many occasions have you had in your career to fire a Glock 42 specifically?
I don't have a specific number. I've fired many Glocks, though.
Do you think over 100 times in your career is safe to say approximately?
Yes.
All right. Popcorn.
Now, let's talk about your understanding and your education or background in the brand of Glock. What do you know about the brand of Glock?
I did take a Glock armorer's course when I began my training at the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, and I'm very aware of how the Glock operates.
Tell us how the Glock operates. And I guess while you're explaining that, can you specify how it operates and how it may be different than other brands?
Do you want me to start on how to essentially fire the Glock?
Sure.
In order to test fire or to fire a Glock, the first thing you need to do is to load ammunition into the magazine. That's the container.
They actually, on the body cam footage, they actually showed him doing a CPR on her. It was awful. Awful.
That holds the cartridges so that you can fire one right after the other. The next thing you're going to need to do is take that top portion of the firearm, and you're going to have to pull the slide back and release it. I'm sorry, after you've inserted the magazine into the mag well. Then you're going to take that slide back and release it. The first cartridge in that magazine will now be inserted into the chamber of the firearm, and the firearm is ready to fire. When you released that slide at the top of the firearm, at that same time, the firing pin has been slightly cocked in the firearm. That means it's been pulled back ever so slightly. Now the firearm is ready to fire. When I pull the trigger, I have to depress the trigger itself, and there's also a trigger safety on this particular.
I've pretty much lost 2 kids now. If we have time, I'll do a quick overview and share it with you.
Firearm. I have to depress the trigger safety and the trigger at the same time in order for that firearm to fire.
Comes in or not.
When I pull that trigger, the firearm will fire. The
Or I
bullet
run
will
out
go
of
down the barrel.
popcorn.
The slide will move back, and the cartridge case will be extracted and ejected from the firearm. At the same time, the slide will now start moving back forward. It will take the next cartridge out of the magazine, and it will load it into the chamber. And it will have now repeated the process that happened again.
On the Glock brand specifically, help us understand the safety precautions that are present on Glock firearms.
The Glock has the trigger safety, which is located on the trigger. It's in the center. It kind of protrudes a little bit from the trigger itself. It's right down the middle. You have to depress it in order for the trigger to be pulled back. The Glock also has a firing pin block safety, which in order for that firing pin block to get out of the way of the firing pin, you have to pull the trigger. And again, in order to pull the trigger, you have to depress the trigger safety. This firearm also has what is known as a drop safety. All that particular thing is doing is it's holding back that firing pin, and then it will pull it back a little bit more and then drop out of the way. And the firearm will not fire unless that has dropped out of the way.
So for instance, with this firing pin block safety, does that help prevent things like accidental shootings?
Stop hiding behind the pole.
Block safety will not allow the firing pin to go forward unless the trigger has been pulled.
The trigger safety you've described as a small object on the middle of the trigger.
Why do they keep going back to him?
The trigger safety is depressed, but not the entire trigger behind it. Will a Glock 42 fire?
If just the safety has been depressed, no, it will not fire. You have to finish pulling the trigger.
Help us understand the difference of the terms semi-automatic firearm and automatic firearm, excuse me. One to firing.
Correct.
Asked in another way, does it require you to completely pull the port that you fire into?
It's approximately 6 inches wide.
Approximately 6 inches wide. And is that standard for you? You've done that in every case when you fire firearms into this water tank?
Not every firearm will get fired into the water tank, but most do.
Okay. So when you test fired this firearm into a water tank that had a 6-inch wide port,
Man, metrics will
many
we'll
hands did
prosecute
it
them for
require
you.
you to use on the firearm to point and aim it correctly in the hole?
I use two.
Overruled.
You can answer it.
I use two hands.
Why did you use two hands?
I want to make sure I'm
Well,
holding the
you are in
firearm
Florida.
firmly, so it will cycle properly.
We can.
sometimes
we
hear
can do
in
that.
conjunction with firearms terms such as recoil. What is recoil?
Recoil is the amount of force that's going to come back at you after you have test fired a firearm or fired a firearm. It causes a little bit of force into your hand.
A Glock 42, or I guess maybe even the Glock brand in general.
Well,
What
yeah.
is the recoil based on your training and your experience firing Glocks? What is the recoil like in firearms?
Depends on the firearm. For Glock, I do have some recoil when I'm firing the firearm. It's not the same as other firearms.
Does the recoil depend on the caliber and type of firearm?
It can.
So when you're holding a firearm and you're firing, for instance, into your water tank, or you're trying to aim, how do you combat the recoil that you would experience of the firearm after, or as it's fired, excuse me?
I am using two hands when I test fire. And then I just wait in between shots to make sure I can aim and make sure I am aimed properly into the port.
May I have just a moment, Judge?
Yes.
Stop putting the camera on him. He's got pubes on his chin.
In this case, were you provided shell casings and projectiles in order to do a comparison after you test fired the firearm?
Yes.
Tell us about that process.
I received bullets and cartridge cases in this case, and I obtained them from the evidence section, and then I brought them back in order to compare them to my test fires of this firearm.
How many test fires did you have when you test fired this firearm?
I test fired this firearm twice.
How many do you use how many of the test fires do you use when you're placing it on the microscope and you're looking at it in comparison to the ones that you're provided from the scene?
I used one bullet, one cartridge case.
Is that standard?
Get on with
that.
that.
Use multiple test fires if needed, or multiple bullets or cartridge cases. It depends on the scenario.
Did you need to do that in this case?
In this particular case, I did not.
Why?
They were well marked.
Okay, so you test fire it, you have a test casing and a test projectile. How many projectiles did you receive either from the scene or from the deceased?
I received 3 fired bullets and 1 fired bullet core.
Did you compare those bullets to your test fire?
I compared the fired bullets to each other and to the test fire.
What's the purpose of comparing the fired bullets to each other?
I had originally, when I was going through to see the individual.
This case that we're starting Monday, the guy that's the defendant, his previous criminal history was armed robbery, and he got a suspended sentence. Go figure.
Individual characteristics. I noticed that they all had the same individual characteristics, and I could see marks that looked similar on each of them as I put each one up individually, and then I put them up together to just index them or mark them to see those patterns were the same at that point.
After you compared the test fires to each other, did you choose one and compare it to each projectile or bullet that you were provided in this case?
In this particular case, I compared the bullets to each other first, and I took one of them and I compared it to a test fire.
Why do you compare the bullets provided to you from the scene or the deceased to each other first?
In this particular case, there was no reason why I did that over looking at them to the test fire. It's just I had seen the pattern when I was looking at them individually, so I marked them at the time.
What is your expert opinion about the projectiles that you were provided associated with this case that you received from either the scene or the deceased?
I identified them to the firearm.
And are you talking the firearm in front of you, State's Exhibit 16?
Yes.
Does that mean that the projectiles that you were provided and used during your analysis came from State's Exhibit 16, a Glock 42 that's in front of you?
Yes.
What about the cartridge casings? Were you provided cartridge casings and asked to compare them in this case?
Yes.
How did you do that?
I took those cartridge cases, I looked at them each individually and made sure they had individual characteristics. And then I compared them in this particular instance. I compared each cartridge case to a test fire.
When you compared each cartridge case that was found at the scene of this event to the test fire, tell the jury what your results were.
I determined that they were identified to the firearm here in front of me.
Does that mean that those cartridge casings were expelled from the firearm that's sitting in front of you?
Yes.
Judge, may I have just a moment?
Yes.
I don't have any further questions. I just one moment to return.
What are you taking notes for? To refresh your recollection?
Cross.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Now, you were involved in doing some
Good choice,
analysis in
Deb.
this case, and then later on, you were asked to do some additional analysis more recently.
That is correct.
And that was based on the retirement of one of the FDLE examiners that was involved in the case,
Yeah.
Mr. Kwong.
That's what I'm assuming, yes.
Okay. But
You
you
right
had
back?
originally done some test fires in the case and did an examination of the firearm.
That is correct.
So then later, when you were asked to continue to review the case or review the rest of the evidence, you were able to use those original test fires that you used in this case.
That is correct.
And you were able to identify those casings to each other and to the firearm in this case.
In this particular case, I ID'd each cartridge case back to a test fire.
Okay. And that test fire was from this firearm that you were shown a minute ago.
Yes.
When you looked at the ammunition, there was two types of ammunition, right, from the casings?
Correct.
And what were the types of ammunition?
There were two types, Hornady and Norma.
Okay. And both of those are obviously 380.
Correct.
Now, Ms. Reeder was asking
Getting
you
right
about
back
the
to you.
safety features on the Glock, on the firearm in this case, and you said that there's the trigger and the trigger safety, and then there's the firing pin block safety, correct?
There's the trigger safety, the firing pin block safety, and the drop safety.
Okay. And all of those, as you pull back the trigger, will go along and allow you to fire the gun.
That is correct.
It's not something that you have to do separately. It all kind of goes together as you pull the trigger.
Correct. As you're pressing the trigger along with that trigger safety and you pull the trigger all the way back, it will release, I'm sorry, not release, but disengage the firing pin block safety, allowing that firing pin to flow through the channel.
Adults could fire this firearm, correct?
I would assume so.
Okay.
Children?
And children could fire this type of firearm.
I can't
Well, that
determine
common.
whether or not anybody particularly could fire a firearm, but is it possible? Yes.
Okay. And in fact, you're able to test for trigger pull. Is that correct?
I do have a way of measuring trigger pull, yes.
But in this case, you did not do that.
No.
And that would tell you the force needed to pull the trigger with this particular firearm.
That is correct.
When you did do the test fires, you didn't find anything unique about this firearm versus any other kind of Glock that you've used.
That would have been
before.
the extra
The trigger
testing
pull
you had
didn't
to
seem any
do.
different than any other Glock that I've fired.
And typically, you've stated that the trigger pull for a firearm is about like opening a can of soda.
Correct.
Nothing further.
Anything else?
Okay.
All right, you can step down, ma'am. Thank you. She
Right,
released from
Liz?
her subpoena. All right, free to go. She's released, right?
Yes, Your Honor.
Call your next witness.
Judge, we have a stipulation that we'd ask the court to read.
All right. All right, so the parties have stipulated to an additional fact. The state of Florida and the defendant Jermaine Bass stipulate to the following. The person who died on the 29th day of August, 2022, has been identified as JAYLA Bass, the individual named in counts 1 and 2 of the indictment in this cause. We're hereby certify the foregoing stipulation is made in good faith for the reasons alleged here and dated the 26th day of February, 2025. Signed by Mr. Terry, Ms. Schlemmer, and the defendant, Mr. Bass. And it's commonly called the stipulation as to identity, and that the parties are not contesting the identity of the individual that died and the autopsy was performed upon in this case. Go. All right,
You're on this time, state rests.
the state rests. All right, we will take a recess at this time.
All rise.
Upon by the state must be a second. We'll move to this. For a judgment of approval as you renew.
Ah.
To
They're gonna ask
review
for
law
acquittal.
enforcement prior to being read Miranda. We'll move for a judgment of acquittal as to the entire indictment,
Denied.
and specifically draw the court's attention to the issue of premeditation and the premeditated murder. I provided the court in the state 2 cases, Bertram, Burttram v. State, and that's found at 780 Southern 2nd, 224. That's a 2nd District of Appeal case. And Tillman, Tillman v. State, and that is at 842 Southern 2nd, 922. Both talk about the standard related to premeditation. While premeditation may be proven by circumstantial evidence, the evidence relied upon by the state must be inconsistent with every other reasonable inference. Where the state's proof fails to exclude a reasonable hypothesis that the homicide occurred other than by premeditated design, a verdict of first-degree murder cannot be sustained. Related to the events in this case, there's been really no testimony statement made by my client to law enforcement saying that he was cleaning the gun and the gun went off. There are some additional statements from Shirley Bass on the 911 call, also talking briefly about the gun being cleaned, and at one point even saying that her son was supposed to be awake and he was running. There's been no testimony as to any kind of issues going on that would cause Mr. Bass to injure or kill or attempt to kill his children in this case. There's been no testimony as to when he became armed. There's no eyewitness testimony from any other witnesses about what happened inside of that room. We're just relying on those two brief statements. The evidence in the case also shows that not only was my client's DNA on the firearm, but his son's DNA was on the trigger and grip as well. And based on all of those issues, as well as the testimony that's been put forward, we would move for a judgment of acquittal as to all counts.
Terry?
Your Honor, both these cases are very distinguishable from our situation at hand. We had Bertram's case is one shot. I think both of these are just one shots. Here we have 5 shots directed at the victims. At least 4 we
That's your liberty?
sure, into the victim's head. 3 of them into JAYLA Bass's head were all centrally located to the head. It's clear evidence of premeditation. The number of shots, the location of the shots, the fact that these children were helpless and defenseless, laying in the bed, and the defendant admitted to being the person shot and gave an excuse as to it being an accident. However, I believe the state has put forth evidence that this could not occur as an accident, and the defendant acknowledged that we do not have to prove motive in this case. And I think just the manner of the shots and the defendant's obvious lie is based on that good argument for meditation.
Anything else from the defense?
No, Your Honor.
All right, the motion for judgment of acquittal is denied. All right, what says the defense as to witnesses? Pardon?
We have more
Of course.
discussing that.
Yeah. On the prosecution side. Forgot how messy popcorn is. Cherries are out of season. Someone's doing photocopier. Come on, people. She's a rough looking chicken, she. Space. Yeah. No, it was packet popcorn. They just muted. Noise. Hello. Can you guys hear anything? Because I can hear jack shit. I haven't had popcorn for years, and yeah, I fancy some. I don't know what happened to the sound. It's not me. It has to be the court. You can hear me chewing. This is the bit I wanted to hear. She's got a nice mahogany gavel.
I understand there's very limited evidence.
Thank you.
But the state can argue there's no evidence of that. Just one less thing to worry about. And I'm just formatting it to make sure that there's no titles at the end of the page without some words after it. But I've added third-degree felony murder as a lesser of count 1. And then make sure you look at the verdict form.
I don't know if it matters to you, but the heading for 7.2 is not center.
I know, but I can't, I don't know what. It's Mr. Cherry's fault. Something that he gave me won't turn off the,
I had the same problem, Judge, with a couple of things as
I
well.
don't know how to unturn off his margins when I put it in mine, so I'm just leaving it looking like I don't know how to format a document. So I obviously do not.
Judge, there's on 7.2.
Hang on one second. Let me get there. Yeah.
We're missing those 2 paragraphs under the act.
The definition of what premeditation is.
Oh, I put it at the front. That's why. I put it in the definition page.
Okay. Okay.
Because it occurred like 3 times. So
Come on.
you're welcome. So you get it at the beginning and then. You had a couple that were still on standby or that we didn't release. You just make sure they're released. In case anyone wanted to come back into the courtroom or not. Usually takes a second. I don't know why. I just resent it with an attachment.
What the fuck are they doing?
To wake, oh, that's for them.
Oh. As I discussed with Mr. Terry an issue, I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't a specific reason that Ms. Bass was not going to testify.
That what?
That Ms. Bass was not going to testify, like she changed her story.
Right.
Correct, like a Brady or Giglio issue. I have discussed with Mr. Terry. I do believe he's making a strategic decision. He is advising there weren't any different statements. But I just wanted to make sure that the record was clear for that.
All right.
What we discussed.
Sure.
And by not different statements, not different per
Correct.
a couple of varieties of statements. But
Right.
I
And
think view from what we've already
she's
said.
here, and you're certainly welcome to talk to her if that would affect your ability about whether or not you wanted to call her too. So, all right. Thank you, Jeff. Can I do that? Yes.
At this time, we'll rest on.
All right, so both the state and the defense have rested their cases. As I warned you, now is my opportunity to instruct you on the law. As I also told you, you each have your own set of written instructions that have been just handed out to you. So you can use these. It's not a history test or a civics test. You don't have to remember everything I've said. So you'll have each of these copies to use during the arguments of the lawyers and or during deliberations as you should see fit. I am required by law, though, to read them aloud to you. So those of you who are visual learners are welcome to read along with me. Those of you who would like to be read
So
to,
where
may
did
be
you-
read to. Either way, I just ask you to pay attention to the
I'm
instructions.
not listening to the jury instructions. I want to know where he changed his defense. Yeah, that's going to annoy me. Because I know Steve did a live on it yesterday. Must have been in day 2. There it is.
Going to be talking. Let me know. Anyways, guys, till we talk again, let justice prevail.
Oh, missed it.
Okay, and we are going to be talking about, just as the thumbnail said, we're going to be talking about the controversy surrounding the Jermaine Bass defense. We're going to be talking about what those are. We're going to be talking about what his defense is, what his defense isn't. We're going to be getting into this. So, first off, what are the controversies? What am I talking about?
Yeah.
Well, there's some controversy here because there's a lot of
Controversy.
confusion. Because originally, when Jermaine Bass gave his original statements, as we heard yesterday by the police who came on scene, Jermaine Bass told the police that he had been emptying his magazine of his gun and the gun accidentally discharged. Of course, when the police go and investigate that claim, they find out that there were 5 shots discharged, and they see that it's a very unlikely situation, right? Now, fast forward to the trial. Now, years have passed, and the defense, the state, and the police investigate this thing and disprove the likelihood of what Jermaine Bass said, and they immediately assume that there's a sinister explanation, and that they find out that Jermaine Bass and his wife were having domestic problems. They were having marital issues, that Jermaine Bass had left the marital residence, left his kids there unattended, and went out to stalk her at a family dinner, or, well, it was a dinner she went to with her family on her side of the family. And we find out that he strangely pulls her over on the side of the road, asks if she's been drinking, and then leaves, goes home, and then this situation occurs. And the police attribute that this must be some culmination of Jermaine Bass losing his mind because he's upset because his wife is leaving him, and he decides, I'm going to off my kids. And somehow this is part of some diabolical plan that he has that is going to punish her for, leaving him. Anyways, of course, that theory that the state is trying to present comes with problems. And one of the problems is, well, when you look at Jermaine Bass's behavior afterwards, although it is somewhat strange and he is somewhat calmer than maybe what you would expect, there is concern when the officers that are on the scene say, yes, he was asking that his son, JJ, get tended to, that he seemed to be concerned about JJ getting
medical treatment,
getting tended to. Now, strangely enough, though, he is not talking about the daughter who's upstairs in the bunk, who he has to know because he brought JJ down, has been shot. Strangely enough, it appears there's evidence that's being concealed. There's a teddy bear that's put over a large amount of the blood. And he isn't necessarily straightforward right away with everything that's happening. He does eventually say, hey, look, this was an accident. I accidentally discharged my firearm, shot her, shot my son. But ultimately, again, doesn't make much sense. Now, then you flip to the mom. And of course, the mom isn't having reactions that you would think are consistent with what the state's saying either, because she isn't talking about Jermaine Bass as a shooter. She isn't saying, bring the police out here and arrest this SOB. She isn't telling the neighbor, well, hey, my husband just shot my kids. She's asking for an ambulance. She's saying, please, I don't know what the hell's going on right now. I need an ambulance. She's in a panic, right? And then once she, all the dust settles, she gets a lawyer. She refuses to turn over her phone. She refuses to let JJ, the son, make a statement. Eventually, when he does make a statement, he claims he doesn't remember anything. And all of this is strange behavior for a woman that, by all accounts, according to the state, has a husband who decided to off the two kids. Not to mention that if he's in some deadly homicidal rage, why is she still walking around? Why did he not shoot her? Why did he not finish the son off? None of that makes any sense. Remember, the dad out in Ohio is chasing, when he was in a homicidal rage trying to off his kids, he's chasing them down in the field. He's certainly not holding them in the living room. So all of these things beg the question of what was actually going on. Now, as we've gotten into the physical evidence, it's become clear that there are some problems, right? And what are some of the problems? Some of the problems are, we figured out that the gun was clearly being stored in the kid's closet. We figured out that if you look at some of the trajectory could be, doesn't mean it is, but it could be consistent with
standing over them,
coming from a downward or from a downward to upward positioning, which could support that the 8-year-old did this. You see kind of a completely haphazard firing pattern, as was laid out by the crime scene reconstructionists. Now, they haven't specifically said these things, but it's just clear from looking at the way the crime scene's laid out, looking at the way this thing went down. But yet we know that Jermaine, his wife, are experienced firearm people who would never present things this way. And if he was going to shoot both of his children, he'd most certainly finish off both of his kids. But the daughter, she's hit. The son, again, appears his wounds could be consistent with ricocheting, a bullet ricocheting around the room and striking him and ultimately causing damage, the damage that was seen. So what is Jermaine Bass's defense at trial? Jermaine Bass's defense is going to be, and it absolutely is, that his 8-year-old son did this. Now, his 8-year-old son today claims he doesn't remember what happened, and he claims that he cannot testify because he doesn't have any memory, and he's had some mental deficits develop because of this shooting. So as a result, the defense and prosecution as well is not going to get any benefit from this child. But it opens up the opportunity that the defense can try to argue that this child was responsible, that he got a hold of his father's gun. One thing leads to another. It discharges 5 times, which would absolutely, you could see, a kid who gets a hold of his gun doing boom, 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 boom. And that unfolds. So the controversy, obviously, right now, I think the confusion that you see that's going on right now in the chat and comments all around this case is the early reports were that he accidentally discharges the firearm when he's loading a magazine. Now it's changed. It's now changed to where they're saying he's completely innocent and he had nothing to do with the shooting, and that this shooting had everything to do with the 8-year-old child getting a hold of the firearm. Now, obviously, I've heard some comments say, well, listen, okay, doesn't that mean that he could still be convicted of the charges that he's charged with? If that's what it is, he should have been responsible enough to prevent these. Well, no, that's not what he's charged with.
No, I
There's
think he's
no
guilty.
elements of the crime that would meet that. So the jury would have to essentially do their own form of jury nullification, in the sense that they would say, you know what, we don't care that he's innocent. We're still going to convict him of this simply because.
I think he's guilty, but I'm just dotting my I's, crossing my T's, basically. I wanted to hear both sides, but I might actually listen. I didn't hear the closing argument, so we'll have a listen to them and see if they clarify anything. Because the medical examiner, and then there was a blood spatter specialist, and she was saying that the way that the blood pooled on the mattress and the blood spatter against the wall in the bunk says that both of, and the testing, the DNA testing of the blood spatter had both children's DNA on the wall and on the mattress. And she was saying that when the firearm was discharged, that both of those children's heads were in close proximity to the mattress and the slats of wood on the wall. So both children had to have been in very close, so their heads would have had to be close together for that blood spatter with the DNA results to have created that pattern. So the child would have had to have been in the bunk with his sister at the time the gun went off, is what she's saying. But if he's saying a ricochet, I don't know. I don't know. I've always said there's no lengths I wouldn't go to protect my children. So could the kid have been playing around in the bed with his sister? I don't know. Anyway, let's listen. I hate how they focus on him. Oh, sorry. I left you at Steve. Sorry. That was a bad pause too.
It was an accidental discharge. I was trying to take the magazine out and it went off.
I want her hair.
They was both in bed. I was in their room. Those were the statements of the defendant, Jermaine Bass Jr. Mere minutes after he murdered his daughter while she was laying in the top bunk of her bed. Those were his statements as he was holding his son, who was profusely bleeding from a gunshot wound to the side of his head that he caused. It was an accident. I was loading the magazine. I was in their room.
Oops.
Those statements you heard on the body worn camera of Adam Lawman, HGSO deputy who first responded. I want to draw your attention on that same body worn camera to the timestamp of 22:46:20. Right after he made these statements, the defendant was asked, "What happened upstairs?" He looked straight at the deputies and he said, "Nothing." That man uttered those words, "Nothing happened upstairs." And evidence are pieces that, when laid together, form an arrow that points to the guilt of only one person in this case. The defendant murdered his 5-year-old daughter as she was sleeping, and he tried to. The
defense is that child, the 8-year-old child, was playing with a gun and shot his sister, and one of the bullets ricocheted off and hit him in the head. And 5 shots were fired. The daughter had 3 to the head.
8-year-old son, JJ. Remember this last Friday during jury selection, you were taught that the state has the burden to prove the elements of the crimes charged beyond a reasonable doubt. The judge explained that to you, and in fact, she just read it in this video. It helps to know what the elements are, what we're focusing on as we go through discussing how and why we know the defendant is guilty of each element of each crime charged in this case. We'll go one by one.
Yeah.
First degree premeditated murder. To prove the crime of first degree premeditated murder, the state must
Yeah,
prove the following.
one between the eyes,
beyond a reasonable
apparently.
doubt. JAYLA Bass is dead. Number 2, the death was caused by the criminal act of Jermaine Lavanda Bass. And number 3, there was a premeditated killing of JAYLA Bass. He's also tried for 2 counts of aggravated child abuse. There we talk about number 1, Jermaine Lavanda Bass committed aggravated battery upon JAYLA Bass or Jermaine Bass. That's counts 2 and 3. JAYLA Bass or Jermaine Bass were under the age of 18. You know that. Jermaine Lavanda Bass actually and intentionally caused bodily harm to JAYLA Bass or Jermaine Bass, counts 2 and 3. In doing so, Jermaine Lavanda Bass intentionally or knowingly caused great bodily harm. You know that as well. You saw the gunshot.
Yep.
The last count he's charged with is count 4, premeditated murder. Jermaine Lavanda Bass intended to commit the crime of first degree premeditated murder. Number 2, Jermaine Lavanda Bass committed an overt act toward the commission of first degree premeditated murder that went beyond mere preparation. Number 3, Jermaine Lavanda Bass failed to.
I mean, yes, it is ridiculous, but stupider things have happened. Not like a kid hasn't, especially if the gun was kept in a kid's bedroom. You know, fuck. You just don't know, do you? The likelihood is bullshit, but you know, you just fucking never know. If it was, yeah, absolutely, one shot. And same with the accidental discharge. You know, you don't accidentally discharge it 5 fucking times. Sorry, with 3 of them entering your daughter's head. No. In fact, I more believe that the son did it than it was an accidental discharge.
Let's talk about how and why we know the defendant is the one who pulled the trigger.
They actually could trace they traced the trajectory of the bullets, both with the trajectory rods and with the blood spatter. And that's why I said the 2 kids' heads were close together and both on the bunk bed when the weapon went off, when it was fired, because of the actual blood spatter patterns and pooling.
And we know that he did it intentionally. We know that the defendant started out his night by leaving his 5-year-old.
I mean, fuck. She could have done it. Who knows? Yeah.
And his 7-year-old home alone in their beds. We know that's true. 5 and 7 home alone at nighttime.
Yeah, so they're left alone at home, and the gun's in their How
in the
about
West Shore area at Ruth's Chris restaurant. How do we know that? States Exhibit 21. We can track the cell phone.
you know how a Glock works? Like if you hold your finger on the trigger, is it a semi-automatic or is it like, do you have to release the trigger to let the firing pin re-engage, or if you hold your finger on the trigger, would it automatically just go bang, 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 bang? Sometimes the gun tells you, oh, yes, yeah, yes, yes. I don't get it, but we don't have a lot of guns here. We certainly not a lot of people have them, unless you own property and you don't keep them for protection. You keep them for believe it or not, a lot of it's culling kangaroos, predators, that type of thing, but certainly not something that anyone keeps for protection at all over here. Fully automatic pistols are not. Maybe it was one shot. No, but the Glock that they used here, is that a semi-automatic? I'm just trying to work out whether or not if you held your finger down and depressed that trigger, would it engage? Like, would it keep firing if your finger was on that trigger? Glocks have a built-in safety that makes it harder to pull the trigger. Yeah, that's what they were saying before. Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes, if you've got to put an animal down, that type of thing. No, semi. So maybe I'm confused in the definition of a fully automatic and semi-automatic. So if I had a Glock in my hand and I, pulled the trigger and engaged it and didn't release my finger, would it keep firing? Or do I have to keep releasing my finger and depressing the trigger for each bullet, for each shot? Semi-automatic means you have to pull the trigger. Okay. Okay. Yeah, well, no, then if it was a fully automatic, then I would consider it. But a semi, if you have to keep pulling your finger 5 times, that kid would have had the shit scared out of him after one. All right. I get it now.
He leaves the children home alone by at least 7:15 p.m.
And you said cock.
We know that Shirley, because the video surveillance shows him leaving before that time. We know that Shirley got to dinner and that the defendant arrived in the West Shore area where Ruth's Chris is located.
Have I still got it up here? Let me.
And around 10 o'clock.
Yes, I do.
We know that he's calling Shirley.
Bring
and he's
cock.
leaving by 10:01.
There's the rooster.
We heard testimony from Shirley's niece, this is kind of more like a cousin or similar in age, China Gadsden. She explained to you what she saw. She saw the defendant in his Nissan truck pull in front of Shirley's car that she was driving. Stop, get out, walk up to the vehicle, and confront Shirley for going to a family dinner. You know, he immediately got back in his car and went to his house. That's what States 21 shows. Through his own records. We know that's true. Just like
Lady Funny
said, the evidence will reveal to you what happened.
And we haven't voted for dipshit. I'm losing my grip.
Other evidence that reveals this, in fact, is true, that the defendant followed Shirley to her dinner and confronted her. It's the Eye on Crime camera video footage that we see.
That's not big enough. There we go.
We can read between the lines of the evidence we have as to the way the defendant was feeling by the time he arrived back home and went inside, where 5-year-old JAYLA Bass was sleeping in the top bunk, and 8-year-old Jermaine Bass, JJ, is laying right next to her. Now, again, the scene will reveal itself. You only have to follow it. We know that the children were in the bed together. Laying side by side in the bed. I'm putting up states 24A because the forensic evidence tells us. We know that JAYLA Bass was laying closest to the wall.
That's awful.
Her head, where this pooling of blood is seen, and that JJ's head was right next to her, either touching the mattress or slightly above. At the point in time that the firearm was pointed at their heads and the trigger was pulled. Remember last Friday when we discussed premeditation, Mr. Terry was talking to you about there's no specific time frame when you're trying to decide whether or not an act was premeditated. It can happen in an instant. Recall that today, Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office firearm expert Jennifer Michaelon took the stand and explained to you what would have to take place in order for that Glock 42 to fire. She explained you first have to take the magazine.
All right, the verdict clock has been going for an hour and 30 minutes. Hour and 30 minutes so far. Those people that chose up to 2 hours, you got half an hour.
You have to put that filled magazine inside the bottom well of the firearm. You then have to
50%.
slide the top.
50% of you said 2 to 5 hours. 38% said under 2 hours.
Of the firearm back in order for it to fire. Then, like she explained, when she's firing these firearms regularly during the course of her investigations as a firearm expert, she uses two hands to be able to safely and precisely point and aim within a 6-inch area. Loading the magazine.
If both the kids' heads were on the mattress, he would have had to have had the gun like up in the air and pointed at himself anyway. That's not what a kid would do. He would hold it the other way and shoot it. And he was 8. So 8. If he was 5, 8, no.
The bullets, putting the magazine inside of the firearm, sliding the top back to make it ready. And then she further explained, not only do you have to point it and aim it, each time you pull the trigger, you have to pull it hard enough to first compress the trigger pull safely and then the trigger itself. And she explained to you that because it is not an automatic firearm, that each time you pull the trigger, you have to pull it and let it go, and pull it and let it go, and pull it and let it go, and pull it and let it go.
Put it and let it go. Pull it and let it go.
And
Just
members
pull
of the
it
jury,
and let it go.
evidence is the scene itself, the evidence revealing to you what premeditation is. All of those steps is the scene revealing to you through evidence what premeditation is.
Yep.
Look at the bullet holes.
5 shots.
On these precious children's face. Look at
Objection, Your Honor, improper argument. What's the jury be?
Right. The jury's to disregard the last statement by the prosecutor. Let's talk about the facts.
Look where the bullet holes are located on JAYLA Bass's head. Those are aimed, precise, deliberate bullet holes. That is not an accident. That is not loading the firearm and it going off. Those are aimed, precise, deliberate shots. Shots that require some sort of control over the firearm. Shot through her cheek, her temple, and her forehead. Jennifer Michaelon says that shots that are within 6 inches of one another require her to use 2 hands to shoot.
She does, doesn't she? It's nice and shiny and wavy. I want to sniff it.
On the son, JJ's head. Now, recall he's laying right next to the top bunk. We don't know what order they were shot. but consider the proximity when deciding how deliberate these shots are. Consider the proximity when deciding how precise they are. That is the evidence revealing to you premeditation, intent, and deliberate shots. Shots that are aimed at the most crucial part of a human being's life.
I'm just the drapes match the carpet. Uh-huh. Well, just fun fact. Red hair is extremely difficult to laser off. So I'm tipping there would be carpet. Yeah, I know this for a fact. I fucking love laser. Best money I ever spent in my life.
Recall.
The only hair I have growing is on my head.
The scene will reveal to you the evidence necessary for you to come to a conclusion as to why.
I don't even think I've shaved my underarms for 3 years.
From the defendant's wallet that was seized, states 15. Recall that this wallet was taken directly found in a closed drawer within a wallet that was right next to the firearm used to murder JAYLA.
I'm not talking about the hair on the head.
To murder JAYLA, and right next to the ammunition belt. Note on
Although I
this.
did do a bloke's head once. That was funny. He was sick of shaving it.
Jermaine Lavanda Bass, Jr. 5'7". Why is that important? Let's consider the trajectory of the fire's shot that killed JAYLA Bass and almost killed JJ.
He's not even on his chin.
We know.
And look at the blink rate. Ugh. Look at him.
That the children are laying next to each other. We know that the blood shown in the pulling of this photo of the top mattress belongs to JAYLA Bass. Consider the trajectory of the bullets you see.
Absolutely. Yes.
Knowing.
Yes. And
the
lots of
bunk
phone calls.
Is topmost portion of
Yep.
the bunk bed is 5 feet 5 inches tall.
Yep.
The defendant is
Mind you, I have to tell you a funny story now you said that. Before I actually opened my shop, I started doing waxing from home. I set up I had 2 living areas, so I set up a part of one of the living areas as a little salon at the front of the house, and I had a curtain, like the hospital curtain type of set up on the roof, so that during the day I could open it up. But if I had a client, I could pull it around the bed and it would be completely private. So I had this guy book in for a male Brazilian. And I must say, after this particular situation, I never ever booked a male Brazilian unless my husband was home. But anyway, this guy booked a male, he's Brazilian, and he came in, and he'd come just from work. He was a landscaper or something, so he there was grass clippings everywhere. And he was getting his back done as well. So I said to him, all right, there's your towel. I want you to, take everything off and lay face down on the table with the towel over you, and I'll come in and I'll start with your back. Give us a yell when you're ready. So I walk in there and there's clothes all over the floor and there's grass shit everywhere. And lo and behold, he's laying on his back, completely naked, with the biggest erection I have ever seen in my life. It was so big. That I threw a hand towel over it and it didn't touch his legs. Yeah. Definitely would have been a challenge. Funniest fucking thing. But and yeah, he was one of those that got off on the pain. Yeah. But cup half full. It's actually quite a lot easier to wax when it's erect because the skin's stretched. Yeah. He didn't get rebooked though. I was always busy.
We know that
It's a good thing I did nursing before that.
Is at a downward trajectory, meaning that when the gun is fired, it has to be angled upward, downward to cause that downward trajectory.
That thing would have hit the back of my fucking tonsils.
We know that this shot goes all the way through to the bathroom in a downward trajectory because we saw evidence of that. The scene will reveal the evidence necessary for you to decipher what happened. Whoever was holding the firearm had to have been taller than 5 feet, 5 inches tall. We know that there was no stippling found on the wounds of JAYLA Bass, meaning that whoever fired the weapon pointing right at her had to be at least, from the testimony, at least 2 to 3 feet away.
I used to have people ring up the salon and ask for tantric massages. No, especially because the salon's name was Be Bare If You Dare. So yeah, always, and it was always men, always. And not a lot of people are comfortable doing men and comfortable doing male Brazilians. But because I had done nursing for so long, it's another bit of skin to me. It makes no difference. Although this one was impressive. So yeah, it didn't worry me. So I actually did quite a lot of male Brazilians. But yeah, it was good because I charged a shit ton for it too.
If you follow the trajectory of the bullet holes that you see here, take them out 2 to 3 feet. That takes you off the bed. At a height consistent with the defendant holding his hands.
Nah. You'd be surprised how many tradies. Lots and lots of tradies. Lots of them. Yeah. It's one of those things, once you have it, you won't go back.
We know also that the person standing on the outside of this bunk bed, at least 2 to 3 feet away from where the children were laying. We know the trajectory as well because of the impact bloodstain pattern. Now, Anna Cox, when she testified, was very educational when she was describing to you what bloodstain pattern analysis is. She explained that it's a discipline of forensic science focusing on identifying, documenting, and analyzing bloodstains in order to interpret what caused the
Oh yes, I had a lot of footballers too. They used to do their legs.
Basically, in layman's terms, she says she looks at the blood stain and tries to decide how it got there. She went on to explain to us different kinds of blood stains and what they mean and how she interprets them. One of them was an impact blood stain.
Not trainers, tradies.
So an impact pattern, which is a natural object striking the liquid blood. She said she considered things such as physics, the natural laws of gravity, and introduction of a mechanism such as force. So if something were to hit an object of bleeding, it would cause a certain pattern, blood pattern stain. Directionality, flow pattern. She said in her expert opinion, based on the DNA evidence that was swabbed from this area, it showed that both JJ and JAYLA's heads were in this corner of the bed at the time in which they were shot. That's an important piece of evidence because, remember, we end where it began. And defense mentioned in her opening statement to you that their client didn't pull the trigger. Well, members of the jury, it's one thing to make a statement like that and then move on. But it requires you to pull the thread, to follow the analysis, to let the scene reveal to you what happened. And you have to follow it until the end.
There used to be a lot of footballers that I would do wax their legs because often they'd have to have their physio tape, to their hamstrings or their quads or something, and so they preferred to have their legs waxed, and cyclists as well, and yes, runners, but no, male Brazilians was mainly the tradies, like your plumbers and your carpenters and your chippies and your gas fitters and all your you'd be really surprised.
The end.
And a couple of
DNA on the fire.
I don't know what the
Now,
politically
recall
correct
a
word is
series
now.
of events. The children are shot. They're on the top bunk. When law enforcement arrives, the defendant is holding his son who's profusely bleeding from a gunshot wound to the head. When he's asked, where's the firearm?
Mainly
He
heterosexuals.
explains to the deputies that it's on top of the dresser, and later explains that it's in the drawer in the master bedroom of the dresser. So let's keep pulling the thread, because what does that mean? It means that after he murdered his daughter
He
JAYLA,
put the
and
back,
after
the
he
gun
shot
back.
his son in the temple, that he left them there, walked all the way past 2 bathrooms into the master bedroom, and he opened up that silver drawer. He put the gun and the magazine inside, and he closed that dresser drawer before doing anything else. The gun was in a closed dresser
Just
drawer.
check out the plumber's crack. Yeah.
If an accident happened in the room with his children, would not a reasonable parent render it immediately?
Objection, Your Honor, improper argument.
Overruled.
It's not reasonable to believe that it was an accident. It's not reasonable to believe that after this firearm accidentally discharged 5 times, that someone would then walk past 2 bedrooms into a different room, open a drawer, place the firearm inside of that drawer, and close it before doing anything else. It is not reasonable to believe. We also know the defendant didn't call 911.
Objection, improper argument.
Sustained.
The phone records show that at 10:34, the defendant dialed out to a number belonging
The
to
landing strip. I used to do Christmas trees. Come Christmas, you can get pubic jewels. You get those little diamante things that glue on. And I used to do a triangle with little diamantes and make it a Christmas tree. See Christmas box. Heck, I used to laugh.
Anna Cox was right. The scene reveals the evidence necessary for you to come to a conclusion as to what happened. The defendant loaded his firearm with a magazine.
I even had a what do you call it? A body piercer come in once a month as well, and he'd rent a room, one of my rooms off me for half a day or whatever, and he'd do all sorts of piercings and shit. It's good.
He slid it back to load it. He then stood on the outside of that gray bunk bed, put his arm up and over the railing, and fired.
Got some bling
His
bling
children
on the
were
bling
sleeping in the top of the bed.
Yes, you have.
The evidence reveals that he shot his daughter JAYLA.
Like I said, takes a lot to shock me.
The evidence reveals that he shot his son JJ in the temple, causing severe injuries that he still suffers from. The DNA puts the firearm in his hands. The trajectory puts the firearm in his hands. And members of the jury, the evidence, when put together, forms an arrow pointing at the guilt of only one person in this case.
Me too.
The defendant, Jermaine Bass, murdered his daughter, JAYLA Bass, who was 5 years old. And he did it with intention, he did it with precision, and he did it with premeditation. The defendant tried to kill his son, JJ. And he did it with intention, he did it with precision.
Oh, I've got lots of stories to tell. Lots.
And the law and the evidence demand that you find him guilty.
Is there any question?
Yep. Take down the exhibit.
All right, let's listen to the closings.
Oh, no, that's all right. I thought I mixed them up.
We're heading to the 2-hour mark on the deliberation. What are you doing? All right. Here they go.
First of all, she said, these are things we know. These are things we know are true. She said that Mr. Bass left the children home alone in their beds. So they're in their beds and he leaves. There's no evidence of that. You didn't hear any evidence that they were in their beds when he left.
Yes, we did.
He followed Shirley Bass. We have an hour later with his car supposedly leaving, a Nissan Titan design, but he followed her. There's not one shred of evidence of that. To confront Shirley for going to a family dinner is why he supposedly stopped them along on the way onto 275 at the West Shore exit. You heard not one piece of evidence that he stopped the vehicle. We're going to talk more about that later, but that was to confront Shirley for going to the dinner. No, we didn't hear any evidence whatsoever about why or why not Mr. Bass did not go to the dinner. The children were laying down. We know that. Well, then why do we have bullet holes higher up? We don't know that. Miss Reeder actually said, quote, read between the lines. Remember when she just said that in her argument? Read between the lines. Let's forget about evidence. Let's forget about burden of proof. Let's throw it all out the window, folks. Just read between the lines and convict a person of murder. She went through this long, elongated theory, and I think it was done multiple times, that Mr. Bass got the gun. He put bullets in it. He put the magazine in. He racked it. He took it into the kid's room. What evidence did you hear about any of that? You heard not one piece of evidence of where that gun was.
There was 5 bullets in the gun
of the children. You heard nothing. We do not know. You don't read between the lines in a case such as this or in any case. There is absolutely no evidence.
The fairies put them in?
Where that gun was prior to the shooting?
Fairies racked it?
Wasn't that? We know nothing. And they have to have evidence. Ms. Michelin told you that they didn't do a trigger pull. They could have done a trigger pull on that gun and given you a poundage of how much force. I think Ms. Bradley had asked her, it's about just 5 pounds. Well, what did she tell Ms. Bradley? The trigger pull on that gun is as easy as popping off a soda cap. Popping off a soda cap is enough force to pull the trigger on that gun. So the state wants you to believe that Mr. Bass did all these things. Well, because that's their theory. That's what they want you to believe. He got the gun. He racked it. He put the magazine in. He pulled the slide out. All of that. But you got to look at the evidence, not their theory. Remember, the judge will tell you the evidence is where you look, the exhibits and the testimony. Not one piece of evidence about that. Ms. Reeder talked about the wallet being found next to ammo. I guess to presume that that's an important factor. Not any ammo that could have been used in this case for certain, because there's not one thing found in the master bedroom that had anything to do with a .380. Detective Holbleman and Corporal DeVoe both told you that.
Sorry.
How do I know? How do I know that Mr. Bass's driver's license height is even correct? The one set of evidence presented, I see that. They want you to read between the lines and assume.
Don't even.
Whoever is holding the firearm had to be taller than 5'5". We know that, said Ms. Reeder. Where did you hear that evidence? What witness said that? Nobody did.
The blood spatter. Hello. The blood spatter person said that. Hello. Were you not there?
Not evidence. Again, going through how he then afterwards goes into the master bedroom, does everything, puts the gun up, and closes the drawer, she said. Right? Evidence. That drawer's open. So that's not true. This is the way HCSO found it. That drawer is open. So what Ms. Reeder said there is not supported by the evidence. There is not one shred of evidence to support their theory. And everything Ms. Reeder had just said to you. You've got to look at the evidence. You've got to look for the evidence. So let me go back. In opening statement, Mr. Terry told you the following. Mr. Bass doesn't call 911. You will find out who he calls. Well, Shirley calls 911. Or Mr. Evans actually calls 911 and gives the phone to Shirley. Shirley's calling 911. Why is there a reason for the spouse to call 911? You heard evidence, a theory of evidence, that DeQuan and then Shirley, the call is made at 22:33, the 911 call. Mr. Bass does not call his mother until after that. Evidence. That's what you heard. Mr. Bass isn't calling Domino's to order a pizza. He's not calling for takeout. While Miss Bass is on the phone with 911, that is when Mr. Bass calls his mom to tell her what happened to her grandchildren. So we know from the timing that that call to the mother is definitely after the 22:33 911. Look at the phone records. It is 22:34 right after. We also know that it's a very quick call. 5 seconds may not have even been answered by his mom. All right, number 2. Mr. Terry says, Mr. Bass tells the police exactly where to find that gun. Presuming, I guess, he knows specifically because he's the one that pulled the trigger. Well, no, not quite. And Ms. Reeder even pointed this out in making their argument, is he's telling them that it's on the dresser. It's not until later that he says, look in or on the dresser.
You're funny.
Ms. Reeder even told you that.
You're funny.
And we have no evidence
You're funny.
of where that gun was prior to the shooting. None at all. Ms. Reeder made a comment about Mr. Bass making the statements to the deputies that first responded. The statements are made mere minutes after the shooting. The 911 calls at 22:33. The statements, you said it yourself in their closing, 22:46. That's 13 minutes.
You're a weirdo.
Marital
You're a weirdo.
discord. Mr. Terry said, oh, there's marital discord, and maybe that's why he did this tragic, horrible act. What evidence did you hear of marital discord? Absolutely none. Again, you have to look to the evidence, not their theory, because they have the burden of proof to prove beyond and to the exclusion of a reasonable doubt. You did not hear about any marital discord from China Gadsden, nor did you hear about any marital discord from Ms. Romeo. Mr. Terry said, you will never know why. He's correct, absolutely, when he says they do not have to prove motive. You will never know why. Well, we don't. And the problem is, there are so many unanswered questions over this tragic, terrible event that took place on August 29th of 2022. Many unresolved questions, mistakes made in this case by many different people.
Can't take the camera off.
Too many unresolved or answered questions. Mr. Bass didn't go to Ruth Chris because he was supposed to stay home to take care of the children. Terry said that. Where'd you hear that? Did you hear that evidence?
There he is.
Stayed home because he had to take care of the children. No evidence. Nada. There was no evidence presented of why he did not go to Ruth Chris that evening. Something is not right in that house. Okay? What evidence did you hear that there were any problems in the house? Nada. Mr. Terry, Mr. Bass was angry and aggressive on West Shore and 275 when he came upon Miss Bass and Miss Gadsden. Well, no, that's not what we heard. We specifically did not hear from China Gadsden say he was angry. You didn't hear that. Nada. She claims he comes upon them and all he says, were you drinking? You know, is that why she's driving? That's it. They're not
My
arguing,
Suki Lala boy.
anything. He's not yelling. Shirley wasn't fazed by it, China said.
Cha.
And that's it. And, folks, that's if you believe this story. Okay, we have China Gadsden, the one she is related to Shirley. And one of the most critical things is, if this was a big deal, and this somehow is their great motive, theory, that's what they want you to believe to convict somebody of first-degree murder, why is it not talked about earlier? China Gadsden never says a word until over 14 months later that this allegedly took place. Corporal DeVoe even told you there would be times he would call China. She hung up on him. I don't want to talk to you. I'm not going to talk to you. All of the behavior of everybody in this case, Mr. Bass, Mrs. Bass, the witnesses, you can consider.
He is
And
beautiful.
their behavior and everything that got done that evening. And China Gadsden never at any time said Shirley was upset. Now, I just want to make this comment. Do you honestly believe in Florida that they're sitting there, stopped in the middle of the road, and they're just sitting there and Mr. Bass goes out and he says, are you drinking? Were you drinking? Is that why she's driving? That's it, right? That there's a ton of cars backed up and that one person is honking. This is Florida. Not one person is honking or blaring, saying, you guys need to go. That's what China told you. Miss Farley asked her, well, were the cars like honking? If this story is true. No, it's fine. They were just waiting.
2-hour mark has been hit.
It's just unbelievable. This was an act to kill, Mr. Terry said. Well, where's the evidence? Where's the evidence of premeditation, the intent to kill, reflection, enough time to reflect on that? Where is the evidence that the premeditation and intent to kill was in his mind before the act? We have no problems talked about, no issues, no evidence, none. No threats, nothing. Shirley was frantic on the 911 call, of course. She's frantic, she's upset. But you gotta look at her overall behavior in this case. You can look at all of that, and you should look at all of that. The 911 operator is constantly asking her, who did this? Who did this? Is the shooter still there? This is a mother. Supposedly, Mr. Bass has just shot and killed her daughter and shot her son. She refuses to answer that question. Never answers that question. At one point, Ms. Bradley talked about this in her opening. She specifically says, no, I don't need police, I need an ambulance. And of course, you'll have a call to listen to. We also have absolutely no clue who she's yelling at on that call. We know for a fact from the call, she's definitely yelling at the 911 operator for not getting there fast enough to bring the ambulance. We know, and she says it, how upset she is with the operator. Look at when the call comes back. She even says, I got the same person. I got you again. So we know she's upset with the operator. And listen to that call. Did you catch the comment about what Shirley said? Her son was supposed to be sleeping, but then he ran. What? Okay. Well, that just further shows me we do not know what happened in that house at the time of the shooting or what happened before. Listen to that call. You're going to hear her say that. And then he ran. Supposedly, as Ms. Reeder says, the children are shot in their beds. That makes absolutely no sense. Now, we know from Mr. Evans, Daquan Evans, that there's about 5 to 10 minutes span of time. That's what he testified to. Evidence. 5 to 10 minutes from the time he heard the shots to Shirley coming to his door, because she doesn't know the address where she lives. She doesn't have her phone. 5 to 10 minutes between the shots and Shirley coming to his door. What is going on in that 5 to 10 minutes? Ask yourself that. What is going on with Shirley, Mr. Bass, in those 5 to 10 minutes? We also know there's 2 parts of the call. There was no evidence presented by the states to show the time difference. In other words, was it 5 minutes between the calls? Was it 5 seconds? We don't know because they didn't present that. And we certainly know, continuing in that second call, Shirley is still not happy with that operator. Take that in consideration as well as the first deputies at the scene. They're all equipped with body cam. Rahman, Rainey, White, and Jones. The big picture is what you can look at. Deputy Jones, I asked her repeatedly, who shot her son? He's asking a mother whose son has been shot in the head. Who shot your son? Is the person with the gun in the area, please? Never. His testimony, evidence. Shirley never answered him, never answered his questions. Deputy White, evidence. The woman was yelling at the officers. We were just trying to help. Deputy White, Shirley was uncooperative in providing any answers. Evidence.
Hello.
Now, the state, I anticipate Mr. Terry's going to get an opportunity to come up and talk to you when I'm done. Please keep in mind what he says and think what I might say in rebuttal to that, and keep in mind he has the burden of proof. But I
Hello,
anticipate,
Gail.
since this is my only time to talk to you.
Oh,
he's
sorry,
gonna say,
baby.
well, she was traumatized, right? She's traumatized.
Sorry.
So you got to look at that whole big picture about her uncooperative, and we'll talk more about that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't
It's just nuts.
explain this case and not answering simple questions posed to her by 911 operator or the deputies. Who shot your son? My husband. Never, nada, never says that. Deputy Jones, the lady wasn't very helpful. That's it. Not helpful at all. Now, Mr. Bass, another comment from opening statement by Mr. Terry. Mr. Bass never tells the police his daughter is upstairs. Not true. Evidence. You heard from Deputy White. Body cams, you got beeping going on, they're difficult to hear. Deputy White said that Mr. Bass did say something about a little girl, and he documented it in his report. It wasn't just off his body cam. He told you that. I heard that. What you kind of hear on the body cam is something like, anyone upstairs? No. Then you can hear something. Listen to, watch those body cams again. Something is said right after that. And I believe that Deputy Rainey's body cam may be one of the best to pick it all up. But listen for the word daughter. Then, is anyone else in the house? No. But I make that up. Deputy White took that witness stand under oath and said he did say something about his little girl. But Mr. Bass is not allowed to be traumatized. Well, Shirley Bass is. You can't have your cake and eat it too. Now, Deputy Jones even told you, well, I didn't hear that. I didn't document it in my reports that he said no, but I was walking behind Deputy White. And I just walked quickly past Mr. Bass. And he specifically told you he might have heard something, Deputy White, that Deputy Jones did not. Evidence, that was his testimony, because Deputy Jones was behind Deputy White. Evidence, I told you that. So I asked if you watch those body cams again. I'm sure Mr. Terry will say the same thing. Now,
Is that better?
let's continue on concerning Shirley Bass.
Yes, spoiled.
Her daughter was killed in a tragic event. Her son was shot in the head. But she desires to be uncooperative with Detective DeBow. He asked for her phone. Remember, her phone was in the crime scene. Some member of HCSO went into the crime scene, took her phone out, and gives it to her. So she has her phone back. Mr. Bass's phone, able to be downloaded, is on the couch. You can see it, right? He's asking, I want to download the phone. No. Never does she give her phone to him to do a simple download. And guess what, folks? You saw phone evidence, right? Now, I believe it was Corporal DeBose said there wasn't anything on Mr. Bass's actual download, but that's why they look at it. That's why they do a cell break. Because it does reveal evidence, and it is important. She was hard to reach, he told you. This is a woman whose daughter was killed and son was shot in the head.
Absolutely.
Mary Lee House. You heard about Mary Lee House. It's kid friendly. There's just the interviewer that works at Mary Lee House who's trained to speak to children in a kid friendly environment. They have to do, and they want to do an interview of JJ based on what happened, what he saw, what he did. On 9/7 of 2022 in the AM, Shirley absolutely refused to let her son be interviewed. Now, the state's going to say, oh, just Corporal DeBose said he's just out of hospital. Well, then say that. Can we wait a little bit? No. She lies to Corporal DeBose. You heard that. And said, well, I got here earlier and I waited a long time. Remember he told you that? What else did he tell you? That's not true. Because I was here early and she was not here. So we know that's false. And Corporal DeBose, what other interesting thing did you hear about that first attempt to interview JJ? Oh, I never even saw his son. He doesn't know if she even brought him that day. So he says, okay. So we set it for the afternoon, same day, September 7th of 2022, for the PM. Now at this point, JJ's uncooperative. We didn't hear testimony that he was in pain or he was upset. Look what had just happened to his sister. We don't hear that. What do we hear? And I hate to even talk about JJ like this. I'm just going to tell you the evidence, please. Corporal DeBose tells you the interview did not take place, that second attempt, because he was disrespectful, had bad behavior, and was actually physically attacking Shirley. Then we have another attempt. Well, let's try to do it on 9/12 of 22. It's now reset for the third time. That interview didn't take place. We know at that point, Detective Bernal and Detective Latou have to go get an investigative subpoena. Corporal DeBose told you all about that. It is an invitation, Corporal told you. It was served on her on September 23rd of 2022. So finally, I think this is the fourth attempt at this point. You know, not Shirley, just give me some time. No, excuses. Finally now, only over a threat of being arrested if she doesn't bring JJ in, does the interview take place. This behavior is not consistent with a woman whose husband just in cold blood, premeditated, shot his daughter, Shirley's daughter, 3 times.
No,
and shot
but
her
it's
son
consistent with a mother who's looking after her son who doesn't want him to be traumatized.
in the head. It just makes absolutely no sense. Corporal DeBose told you she was uncooperative with the investigation. Something she was cooperative with, he told you. He didn't quite tell you what those things were, but she was uncooperative. Just the same as you've heard from every single deputy that took that stand, the first responders. He also said, quote, Shirley was uncooperative with all attempts to have her son interviewed. What is going on here? What exactly happens in that home? What is going on? Do you really know, beyond and to the exclusion of all reason without what happened in that apartment, that townhouse, for that gun to be shot and the children to be injured? Mr. Terry, Shirley was very frantic. He also seems to imply in his opening, but Mr. Bass wasn't, right? Shirley is frantic on the body cams. You see her. But nobody has met Shirley before and doesn't know how she acts. Nobody has met Mr. Bass before and see how he acts. Not Mr. Evans, not the deputies. We talked in Board Iron, if you remember this. Do people act differently to trauma? You guys agreed, yes, you can. No two people are alike. You can be frantic or you can be like a blank slate and in shock. It sounds like Mr. Bass and Shirley as well. So people react differently to traumatic events. And certainly being, quote, blank and quiet, the words of Mr. Evans to describe Shirley Bass describes Mr. Bass. In addition, you can consider what everyone else told you from the Sheriff's Department concerning Mr. Bass. Unlike Shirley Bass, he was cooperative with the investigation in all stages. Now, we also know that we hear Mr. Bass tells the deputies, come in. You can literally see, watch the body cam, he's all sweaty. You can see the shine because he's sweat from trauma. Just help my child, please. I believe Ms. Rito just said in her closing that he never asks for help or to help his children. Absolutely false. Just help my child, please get the paramedics. Again, evidence from the body cams. Mr. Terry in his opening. Mr. Bass said it was an accident. This was no accident. Did y'all notice that when Mr. Bass is first asked by the deputies, how this happened? What does he say? He says accidental discharge. That's what he says to me first. He doesn't say, I did it, I shot it. He says accidental discharge. It's a period of time. Deputy Rainey steps outside. He notifies that they have found JAYLA. And then the house is clear. Comes back in the house. They're frantically taking care of the children. Fire rescue is coming in. Later, when Deputy Rainey is asking more specific questions, then, and only then, does Mr. Bass says, it was me, I was cleaning the gun. Common sense dictates. No one's going to be cleaning a gun in the kid's name. What is going on in that house? what happened in that house that tragic evening. We don't know. You didn't see any cleaning supplies out, did you? I submit to you, he was not in the kitchen cleaning the gun. He was protecting someone else. It just makes absolutely no sense. And evidence that you have is that we do know that there was a substantial period of time, 5 to 10 minutes between the shots and Shirley coming to ask to use Mr. Evans' phone. Why she's even doing that, I don't know, because her phone is in the townhouse where it's retrieved by one of the members and given back to her. And we know there's a gap in the calls. What did Mr. and Mrs. Bass discuss in that time period? Is Mr. Bass protecting someone? We don't know. Questions unanswered. That is when you have not proved your case beyond and to the exclusion of a reasonable doubt. So based on some of those things that we have just talked about.
A spoof on who? On who you're talking about? Donna Edelson. I have not even watched one of those of that trial. Not one. Is she funny, is she? I might have to watch one.
Do you believe that this case has been proved beyond and to the exclusion of all reasonable doubt? You have to look to the state for that.
Got any grandma?
You have come away. We submit you have come away with more questions than anything else. Please keep in mind as well.
She'd be good on my gangster granny playlist then, would she?
We do not have to provide you.
I've got a few more of them to do too.
And try to explain who pulled that trigger, what happened, how the shooting took place. Remember, you need to look to the state for the evidence. We do not have to give you scenarios, explain what happened, discuss what happened. You have to say, did the state prove this beyond the exclusion of a reasonable doubt? So I want to talk about the law just a little bit because we talked extensively in voir dire. Remember the presumption of innocence. You go back to that jury room. Keep in mind that it must be completely removed. We know we have a person and they're clothed in that presumption. That's our law in this country. It must be removed completely in order for you to consider a guilty verdict, in order to convict. Now, please don't be misled. There are no percentages in the jury instructions, but it's a way to kind of explain it to you. The presumption of innocence must be taken off of Mr. Bass 100%, right? Because that's the only way they can carry the burden and prove the case. If it's removed 50%, there's reasonable doubt. If it's removed 75%, there's reasonable doubt. If the state has only reviewed it,
Judge, this line of argument.
Sustained. There's no specific percentage as relates to reasonable doubt. It's an abiding conviction of guilt.
And as I told you, now, what is reasonable doubt? The judge gave the definition of it. She talked in voir dire about it and told you it's basically a doubt you can attach a reason to. It comes from the evidence, a conflict, or lack of evidence. Now, like Ms. Bradley told you in opening, this was tragic. Members of the jury had to see the photographs, listen to the evidence. Tragic. That was a tragedy what happened that evening to those children. But you cannot let sympathy affect your verdict. I know it's hard. You cannot. The judge instructed you of that. You cannot let sympathy or bias affect your verdict. You must follow the law. And the question you need to answer is, has the state removed that presumption of innocence completely? And if they have not, the verdict has to be not guilty. That's our law. Ms. Reeder and Mr. Terry have done their jobs. And because they've done their jobs and presented evidence does not mean they are able, through the evidence, to remove that presumption. That's going to be that's up to you guys. As the judge told you in the jury instructions, I believe you have a copy, you should go back there. The presumption of innocence must be overcome by the evidence beyond and to the exclusion of a reasonable doubt. And also remember, the abiding conviction of guilt and conviction of guilt. Judge gave the instruction, we talked about it in voir dire, you have the instruction. That part of the instruction starts off talking what reasonable doubt, which is a concept sometimes hard to define, is what we talked in voir dire about. It's not a possible or speculative doubt. I told you that. However, if after carefully, or on the other hand, I believe it says, on the other hand, after carefully considering and weighing the evidence, there is not an abiding conviction of guilt. Or if you have a conviction of guilt, but it is not stable, it wavers and vacillates. That means and shows you the charge has not been proven beyond and to the exclusion of all reasonable doubt, and the law requires, it's tough in a case like this, but the law requires a not guilty verdict. That was what we were talking about. Mr. Terry, I stole from him in voir dire when he used the waver and vacillating to talk about premeditation. Same thing. You go in your closet that morning and you're trying to decide what to wear, and you can't quite decide. It's waver and vacillating, going back and forth. And if you can even...
Yeah, she looks a bit rough. I think she might have had hard life, that type of book.
have a conviction of guilt. No abiding conviction of guilt or conviction of guilt, but not waivers of assets. It has to be by law, not guilty. So if you go back in the jury room and you're thinking to yourself, well, he's possibly guilty, he may be guilty, he could very well be guilty, he's probably guilty, then you're having a reasonable doubt. And please keep in mind that we do not have to have proved Mr. Bass's innocence, rebutted anything that was said. I think we showed you quite a bit, and a lot of problems and errors in this case. But at this point now, we're at Wednesday, there's just too many questions in this case to overcome that presumption of innocence. And those questions have not been answered. You cannot look at Ms. Reeder or Mr. Terry's theory. Evidence, evidence, evidence. As I said in jury selection, what does not guilty mean in our country? Well, that's exactly what it means. Not guilty means
Yeah,
he
yeah.
has not proved their case beyond to be not did it.
Rebuttal, please. You
Now,
just,
Dr. Riley.
you're just going over
That gun.
bullshit now.
So, and of course, we have no evidence concerning little JJ in that.
Oh,
So,
Christ, it goes on for another
back
fucking
to
half an
the
hour.
Remember what Dr. Riley really said.
About rebuttal.
Mr. Terry?
I don't think I could cope with her voice for another half an hour.
It's interesting to sit there and listen to all that and realize she's doing her job. She's trying to find anything she can pick apart in the state's case, of course. She went
There
through
is
the
the
witness and
full-
tried to find anything that they did
full
wrong,
version.
find a mistake.
Yesterday's
She spent a lot of time
video.
talking about Shirley Bass. And she ignored the strongest and the most important piece of evidence in this entire case. The words of her own client. The words of her own client, the first
Yeah.
words that came out of his mouth when the deputies come in there to this horrific scene. She completely ignored that, ladies and gentlemen. She completely, and in fact, I guess because she's ignoring it so hard, she didn't even get right what he said. He never said he was cleaning the gun. He said he was removing the magazine. That's how much she's ignored it, is that she didn't even get the words he said right. Listen to the tape. Listen to what he says. I was trying to take out the magazine and it went off. I wrote down the quote exactly. He said anything about cleaning the gun. But she's not listening to those words because she doesn't want you to listen to those words.
Objection, Your Honor, improper argument.
Sustained.
Those words are the strongest and most compelling piece of evidence in this entire case. She wants to tell you, well, that doesn't tell you who shot that gun. You know who tells you who shot that gun? He tells you who shot that gun. Jermaine Bass tells you who shot that gun. He said, I did it. And those deputies and those detectives began an investigation believing that man said it was an accident. So they want to look and see what's going on. And then it comes to like, this couldn't possibly be an accident with 5 shots. But he admitted it was him. And one of the last things Schlemmer said, something to the effect of, who is he protecting? Well, where's there any evidence he's protecting anybody? Oh, I can tell you he's protecting himself. Those words, that lie, was protecting himself. He's caught. Hand in the cookie jar. Children shot. He's in the house. Murder weapons in his drawer. He's holding a baby. What does he say? It was an accident. That's the first lie he could come up with, right? You couldn't blame Shirley. We don't even know Shirley was outside. He said Shirley was in her room. Shirley wasn't in that room, for sure. Why would we protect Shirley? Why would we protect Shirley Bass if she shot her children? We wouldn't do that. You know, earlier in the night, he was over there confronting her about whether she'd been drinking. Did you protect her? That common sense test to you, ladies and gentlemen, that is not going to happen. No. He came up. He knew he was caught. He came up with the first lie he could think of. It was an accidental discharge. And they're like, what? For both of them? Yeah. Yeah. I was taking out my magazine and it went off. But she wants you to ignore that. She barely even talked about it.
Objection, Your Honor, improper argument and shifting the burden.
Improper argument sustained.
That is the strongest piece of evidence in this case. You can rely on that evidence and that evidence alone. That's an admission, ladies and gentlemen. He admitted to those deputies that he fired that weapon. Came up with a ridiculous excuse, but he admitted it. But he admitted it, leaving just enough truthful nuggets in it. Because he couldn't quite figure out the right way to lie. So that's what he says. Accidental discharge. Okay, that's the first thing he says. I was trying to take out the magazine and it went off, right? They was both in bed. He said that. They was both in bed. No one told him where they were or what was going on or where they'd been shot. That's actually true. They were both in bed. How did he know that? How did he know they were both in bed? Because he's the one who pulled the trigger. They was both in bed. Physical evidence shows they were both shot in that bed. I was in their room. Now he even puts the room where they were shot. Got the bed, the room. That's all true. So he's mixed in his lie with a little truth. I was in their room. They was both in bed. Where was Shirley? She was in her room. Again, those are his words, not my words. Not words by the Corporal DeVoe, not words from Anna Cox, not words from Jennifer Michael, not words from any of those people. Those are the words of the defendant, the man right there. So every time Mr. Lemmer says, well, that doesn't tell you who shot the gun. Well, I tell you who told you who shot the gun. He did. So Mr. Lemmer said, he said, that's not true. Another thing, and again, you need to rely on your own memory of the evidence. You need to rely on the evidence that you take back there with you. But she pulled that picture out to show the drawer open and the gun being. Watch the video camera, the body camera with David Jones when he goes in to clear that room. That drawer where that gun is found is almost completely closed. It may be open about this much. And it's clear that they opened it more to put the markers on it. So yes, in fact, the defendant did take that gun after his 2 children were shot in the head, and rather than lend aid or render aid to them, he took that gun and he walked through that house while his children were bleeding out in their beds, took the time to do that, remove the magazine. Oh, again, a little nugget of truth thrown in there with that lie. I was taking out the magazine. Yeah, he did take out the magazine. Why? When your children have just been shot in the head, are you taking the time to walk down the hallway, go into your bedroom, pull out the magazine, place the gun down in there with the magazine, and close the drawer? Does that make any sense to you, ladies and gentlemen? So that was the way he did that lie, but producing enough nuggets of truth that his statements actually had some truth in it. And the only person, the shooter, would know what those statements were. Where they were shot is huge. We only know that from Anna Cox because Anna Cox, who's the bloodstain expert who you heard from, was able to tell you that based on the bloodstain pattern, there was only one place these 2 children were shot, and that was in that bed, in that little corner up there. They were both shot in the head, up in that northwest corner of the bed. And he knew that. They was in bed. He knew that scene. He knew where they were. I mean, that's as close to a confession as you're going to get, ladies and gentlemen. He's actually giving you details about the crime, the location, specific enough to where they were in the bed. The shooter would know that. The person who pulled the trigger would know that. That is the strongest and most compelling evidence in this case. And to ignore that, because the medical examiner wrote upward trajectory instead of downward trajectory, or vice versa, would be an injustice. Don't lose sight of the forest through the trees. Don't ignore the strongest and most compelling evidence of this case, because the crime scene investigator wrote bottom bunk instead of top bunk. She made a mistake. So not only do his words follow along with the evidence perfectly, other than the accident. That's the part he didn't want to admit. He didn't want to admit his intent. That was an accident.
Objection on a comment on silence.
Overruled.
So instead of saying his intent, which was to kill those kids, it came out as, oh, it's an accident. But on top of that, the physical evidence also corresponds to that. The location, just where he said they were. Where they were shot, just where he said they were. His DNA is on the gun. He knew where that gun was. They'd be like, where's the gun? Where's the gun? It's on the dresser. Well, it's in the dresser. He knew. How did he know? Because he put it in there. Who does that? The man with a guilty conscience. The man who's trying to hide away the murder weapon. That's who does that. This has been an accident. If someone else had done it, do you think he would take the time or bother to go and put the gun away? No, of course not. And it's no coincidence that gun was next to his wallet, because that's his gun. You just stuck it down in there. The shots were from off the bed. That's clear. If the shots to JAYLA were from a person on the bed, meaning JJ, there would have been skipping, ladies and gentlemen. There's no way that he would not have been shot within 12 inches, she would not have been shot within 12 inches. And there would have been some evidence of a close range fire if JJ had fired that gun. There would have been evidence of a close range fire. That gun was fired from off the bed, at least 2 feet away. Who could have done that? Not JJ. Oh, I know who could have done it, the man who admitted that he did it. Ms. Schlemmer says, she knows me, she knows I'm going to talk about transfer. Of course I'm going to talk about transfer DNA. And yes, it is a very heavy statistic. So I have no doubt that JJ touched that gun, or that some fluids from JJ in some manner or another transferred from the hands of that man onto that trigger, trigger and grip. And remember, when she says trigger grip, she swabs the entire grip where you hold the gun as well as the trigger. So it could have come from the trigger or the grip. I mean, it could come from the trigger. Or trigger could come from anywhere. But yes, that's transfer DNA. Now, possibly, and as we know, one of these shots goes awry. 5 shots were fired, 4 hit their target, 1 went awry, went into the wall, into the bathroom. How could that make it happen? Maybe JJ, in an attempt to save his life, grabs the gun and pushes it away from his head, from Dylan. And the gun goes up and shoots it away from him. Maybe JJ did grab that gun. Maybe it was transfer DNA. But there's no evidence that JJ would have shot this gun. He's an 8-year-old boy. No evidence he had any animosity with his sister, any issues with his sister. Those shots were targeted. But also remember, he shot himself. Are we to suggest that he shot his sister 3 times, then shot into the wall, and then shot himself in the head? Oh, and hit his hand at the same time? He didn't shoot that gun. That's silly. It's silly to believe that he would shoot his sister and shoot himself. And that just makes no sense, ladies and gentlemen. No sense. But yes, his DNA was on there, but it's easily explained. You know his DNA is not on there? The person Ms. Schlemmer talked about the most in the first half of her closing, Shirley Bass. She is excluded from the grip and trigger. Excluded. She did not hold that gun that night. If she had held that gun and fired those shots, you better believe some of her DNA would be on that gun. She did not have that gun. There's zero physical evidence whatsoever that suggests Shirley Bass did this. You know, and I know that you all may be sitting here wondering, well, we didn't get to hear from Shirley. I wonder what she said. Well, I'm going to tell you something right now. You did. All of you did. You heard from her in that 911 call. And I urge you very hard to listen to that call. Listen to it, compare it with the video we have of her outside the Quan Evans apartment. Listen to how her voice changes, timeline, and everything. So I'm going to suggest to you what happens. And you watch this and you will see that this is in fact what happens. And listen to the audio carefully, and you will hear this. But first of all, notice that when she is outside, the very first time she's outside, and you need to watch the video very closely. And it's hard to see sometimes. But if you watch it enough times, you will know where the door is to the Bass household. You will see her come out. And she comes out at 21:15, which is 10:21. So she comes out a while before she ends up at the Quan Evans house. And watch her out there. You'll see her in the parking lot, and she's kind of walking like this, and then she kind of walks another way, and then you'll see her walking this way before she ever comes to the area where the Quan Evans is. She's out of that house for a while. So what does she say when she's on that phone call? You hear her. She's frantic. She's terrified. She can't believe what's going on. She knows there were gunshots in her house. She says, someone shot my whole family. She's petrified. She doesn't know what's going on. She knows there were gunshots. And then she says, I don't know what happened in this house. She doesn't know. She didn't see it. She tells you right there, I don't know what happened in this house. She knows there were gunshots in her house. And she's scared for the safety of her family. But she says, I don't know what happened in this house. But she is scared. You can hear that in her voice. And she's not super confrontational, right? You can just hear she's like scared. And she's not making a lot of sense when she talks. But then watch on the video. She has that phone for about 2 minutes and 20 seconds, 2 minutes, 4 seconds. And you'll see she starts walking back into the parking lot and she heads back to the house. And look at the house. You'll see the door open. And that's when she first screams and really loud, clearly not at the 911 operator, as they would have to believe. She's clearly speaking to someone out there. And she says, what the fuck is wrong with you? What the fuck is wrong with you? You know who she's talking to? She's talking to that man right there. What the fuck is wrong with you? Because she knows he did something. She knows he had that gun and she knows he did something. But she doesn't seem to really know what yet at this point, because you don't see her say anything, and then she calls him, you fucking asshole. I apologize for my language, but I'm trying to quote to you exactly what was said on that day, on that phone call, which I urge you to listen to. But it's at the 2-minute and 40-second mark. Her voice, her inflection, everything changes, because at that moment, she is now seeing Jermaine Bass, and she's seeing him holding her boy. She says, that man was playing with his freaking gun. I don't know what the fuck happened. Again, I don't know what the fuck happened. She doesn't know. All she knows is that her husband, of all people, had a gun, and suddenly gunshots are going off, and he walks out with his son in his arms. And that's when there's a realization, because you'll hear that now suddenly she starts to get some more specific. My babies, my kid been shot. She didn't say my kids, she said my kid. Singular. At this point in time, she probably doesn't even know JAYLA shot up there. But now she's seeing JJ. Bring the ambulance. My son is bleeding. My son. Again, she doesn't say JAYLA. Why? Because at this point in time, she was outside and she sees her husband come out and he's got the boy. She doesn't even know what's going on with the girl. She doesn't realize that her daughter is dying upstairs. This is Shirley's testimony, ladies and gentlemen. Unfiltered, raw, emotional, at the time, the most trustworthy statement you could possibly get from individuals when they're in the experience at the moment going through it. And what is she telling you? She doesn't know what's going on. She knows something bad is happening in her house, which means she's not there. She has nothing to do with it. She's not involved with it. The phone disconnects. You hear her come back in. If you listen, you can tell there's an echo. She's inside that house at that point. She yells at him, leave him alone, don't touch him. She says, I swear to God, if my son died, you can hear all this on that phone call. And yes, she's very rude to the 911 operator, but remember, she's now realizing that her son is shot in the head. She doesn't know what's going on. She doesn't understand it, but she knows that that man right there, Jermaine Bass, has something to do with it. That man playing with his freaking gun. You know, Ms. Schlemmer wants to talk about how uncooperative Ms. Bass was. What did the detective tell you? On the day this happened, while her daughter is lying there dead, and her son is in a coma in the hospital, she spends an hour talking to him about this. Think about this, ladies and gentlemen. This woman, whole world has just exploded. Everything has exploded. The husband, the man she's in love with, is now being investigated or believed to have shot and killed her daughter, and her son, who could potentially die, is there in the hospital. Her mind is reeling. And Ms. Schlemmer wants to sit here and talk about her cooperation. She spent an hour. Detective or Corporal Dabo told you she spent an hour talking to me. And he went back the next day and talked to her for even longer. And Ms. Schlemmer wants to call her uncooperative? You know what uncooperative is? Is lying to police. Who do we know did that? Mr. Bass. She wants to get here and tell you, well, he was cooperative that whole time. No, he wasn't. How is lying to police cooperative? You heard Corporal Dabo, we based our investigation on what he said happened. They weren't looking for a whodunit or who's the other person that might have done this. He told them I did it. But it was an accident. So that's how they're basing their investigation. So again, remember, we talked to you earlier, we don't have to prove motive, okay? And I think you all understood that, and we went through that in some great detail. But I told you, you're going to get some evidence that something was not right. And I think you heard it. You heard it from China Gadsden, who got up here. And she told you that she was being aggressively tailgated as she left Ruth's Chris. And that's why we presented all that evidence to you, to show you and to corroborate what China said to you. Because we know that that man left those kids alone, got in his Nissan Titan truck. We see him pulling out from the residence. We see him driving down Fletcher towards the interstate. We have his phone records that show his phone going all the way down to West Shore, where he's there for a couple of hours. I'm not sure what he's doing there, but he's there, waiting until Shirley leaves, at which point he aggressively tailgates her. China's, what is this guy doing? She doesn't know it's him. The only evidence of anyone being aggressive, acting abnormal that night, is that man seated right over there. Not Shirley. How was Shirley? Shirley's fine. She's normal. She's happy. It was her sister's birthday. And we're all out at dinner. The only person with any sort of aggression that night was that man seated right over there. And we proved to you, ladies and gentlemen, that. And we don't have to prove to you motive, but something was not right. He was clearly upset with Shirley for some reason. You don't follow your spouse to a dinner, wait outside, and then aggressively tailgate your spouse. Your spouse is leaving the dinner, and then get up in front and stop him from driving anywhere, and then go up and accuse him of drinking. You don't do that unless there's something very, very wrong. But Jermaine Bass took that anger home and unleashed it on his children. Whether to punish Shirley Bass or for whatever reason, we don't know, but he took that anger out and he put it into his children. Again, zero physical evidence to suggest Shirley Bass had anything to do with this. In fact, everything seems to indicate the opposite. You see her behavior, you see her franticness as this happens. You hear that 911 call. I'm telling you right now, listen to that 911 call. That is raw, that is pure. That is when a person is experiencing the moment. And you can tell she doesn't know what's going on. She is frantic and scared. But the few moments that she says anything that you can tell that she knows something happened, is she is accusing that man right there. What the fuck is wrong with you? You know, Shirley was the one trying to attempt to get help for her kids. We know Mr. Bass had his phone with him because he made a phone call. While Shirley's out there going, get that ambulance here, send an ambulance. Is Mr. Bass calling 911? And Mr. Leonard says, well, Shirley was doing that. How does he know what Shirley's doing? She was out there. She was outside. She was outside trying to find a man to help her. Someone who could give her a phone so she could call 911. Most likely because she was too terrified to go back in the house, not knowing what's in there. So she finds a man who helps her, gives her a phone and calls 911. And what's he doing with his phone? He's calling his mom. He's not calling for help for his children who've just been shot. that what a father does?
Objection, Your Honor, improper argument.
Sustained.
This was an accident. The first thing you want to do is call and get some help. Certainly not put your gun away neatly and close the drawer and call mom. There were 4 people in that household. JAYLA's gone. Sadly. JJ, Shirley, and Jermaine. And I've shown you, I believe, and proved to you that Shirley might have done this. She is excluded from DNA on that gun. She never touched that gun. At least not the work or the trigger. Physical evidence does not connect Shirley in any way to this case. Her behavior afterwards is typical of a person who's just gone through a serious traumatic event. What's not typical is the behavior of the father, of Jermaine. So the only other question is, Jermaine or JJ? Don't remember, don't ever forget this, the father is the one who admitted he shot that gun. And that's why Ms. Reeder spent so much time with that crime scene investigator to talk about the angles and everything like that. To show you, ladies and gentlemen, that that shooting came from off the bed. And we know JJ was shot on the bed. And then also ask yourself this, 2 people, right? Those 2, JJ shot himself in the head? That doesn't make sense. But again, no evidence of close range firing. The angle from which those shooting shows that the shooting came from off the bed. This was not JJ. JJ had nothing to do with these shots. JJ was innocently laying there with his sister when that man walked in and brutally shot them both. That's what happened. It's so simple. It's right there in front of you, ladies and gentlemen. And you can pick apart a medical examiner's report of up or down.
I'm going to object, Your Honor, improper argument, denigrating the defense.
Sustained.
We can look at little things like that, but what we need, don't forget and don't miss the biggest stuff in this case. The strongest, most compelling, biggest piece of evidence. And that is the statements from Jermaine Bass on that night and the statements from Shirley Bass on that night. Look at that physical evidence, and you will know that these shots came from off that bed. That excludes JJ. No DNA of Shirley, that excludes Shirley. That leaves that man right there. And guess what? That man really did it. Very simple. This is not a complex case. There is no doubt whatsoever that on that night, on August 29th, 2022, Jermaine Bass, who told you he did, told those deputies that he did, that Jermaine Bass shot and killed his own daughter, JAYLA Bass, and tried to shoot and kill his son. That, ladies and gentlemen, is murder in the first degree, premeditated, because look at the placement of those shots. Ms. Reeder showed you that. There is a picture of JAYLA Bass, and you can see those 3 shots, well placed, all within a very close range. Does anyone think an 8-year-old boy could do that? Really? Sure, an 8-year-old boy can fire a gun, but with that kind of precision and accuracy? That takes someone who knows how to fire a gun. You know, we did introduce a lot of evidence and a lot of other bullets. That's to show that Mr. Bass knows guns. Yes, there's clips, holsters, there's all sorts of stuff. There's that one thing where it has all the bullets in it. We presented that evidence to you, ladies and gentlemen, to prove to you and show you this was not an accident. This man knows guns. He knows how to fire guns. He knows how to aim that gun. And he put those 3 bullets into the head of his daughter. And he put that 1 bullet into his son, who still has to deal with that 1 bullet. That's first degree murder. That's attempted first degree murder. And that is aggravated child abuse. Both counts. It's not only premeditated murder, it's felony murder, because he's guilty of aggravated child abuse for what he did to those children, and that makes it felony murder. And I'm convinced, ladies and gentlemen, that when you go back there, use your common sense. Think about what is the evidence to best rely on. The state has no doubt that you will return a verdict for guilty as charged on all 4 counts.
All 4.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, so it is almost 6 o'clock. My intention, unless you would like to vote to overrule me, is to go ahead and release you for the night, to come back tomorrow and begin your deliberations fresh tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. No, they're not. 2 hours and 40 minutes. I don't think it'll be long though. So what I might do is keep this open for another hour and see if we've got a result. If not, I'll shut it down and Actually, there's probably no point me keeping it open. I'll just watch it in bed. And I'll set a stream up just in case it comes through. I'm not sitting watching a seal all night. Oh, actually, it's nearly 5 o'clock in the morning, so it's not all night. These old bones are getting a bit stiff. All right, get rid of this. Where is it? There. Oh, I've lost me overlay. There. Yeah, I think I've hit my wall. I shall. All right. If by chance I sleep through it, I will I'll do a recap tomorrow. Catch it. I think we pretty much all know what it's going to be. Do we not? We might be surprised, though. You just never know. All right, my darlings. You look after yourselves. Stay warm, stay safe, and don't be good. Be good at it. Till next time. Bye-bye.
Hey there, thanks for stopping in. We hope you will join us again. We all look forward to next time. We get to talk about true crime. Clues. Justice served in an honest fight. True crime tales till the verdict's right. Solving more than just trivial quests, where sentences rule and the defense rests. Our true crime family is great. All types of topics we debate. Smash that like and ring that bell. Hit subscribe, you might as well.